Yes. Welcome, councillors and members of the gallery, to ordinary meeting 4517 of Huntersville Council. Could you all please be upstanding? I'd like to acknowledge and show my respect to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, of elders past, present and emerging. Reverend Michael Armstrong will be delivering the prayer.
For those who pray, you might like to pray with me. Those who don't, you might like to pause and take a moment to reflect. As we gather in the presence of God, we acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and custodians who we meet in this place, the Wallamata people. In your wisdom and love, Lord, you gave them this place. As we seek to learn to live together on these ancestral, we pray for hearts to be reconciled and united as one. We pray for our nation, for Charles, our King, Anthony, our Prime Minister, Chris, our Premier-elect, Kylie, our Federal Member, Anthony, our State Member, and for the members of this local council, for Zach, our Mayor, for Ross, Julia and Elizabeth, members and councillors of North Ward, for Tatiana, Jim and Richard, councillors of South Ward. We pray for our council, for the many staff and volunteers who work across so many sectors, for Mitchell, our General Manager, and for all his team. We pray upon them this night, Lord, a spirit of wisdom, generosity, and willingness to work together for the common good of this municipality. Pray for your grace, Lord, that they may diligently and honourably, free from private interest and prejudice, discharge the duties entrusted to each of them. Across our municipality, we pray for all who live and work and study here in Hunters Hill, Boronia Park, Huntleys Cove, Gladesville and Woolwich. Bless our community, Lord, for our spirit of unity, compassion, concern for one another. We are most mindful at this time for those who face stress, particularly those who face economic hardship, those who are unwell, those who suffer in mind, body and spirit. We pray for all who support them, honouring and caring for those who are in the greatest need. Particularly pray for our non-profits across this community. At this time where people of faith gather together, we pray for Muslims celebrating Ramadan, Jews preparing for Pascha, and Christians in the midst of Lent and preparing for Easter. In our local community, we pray for relationships between people of faith and pray especially for our Christian communities who pray and prepare for the Good Friday walk. We pray all this through the one who revealed the nature of a true servant heart, Jesus Christ our Lord. This we pray in his name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Michael. Please be seated. Thank you, Reverend. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live online. Members of the public are advised their voice and image will form part of a live streaming of the council meeting, and the webcast archived and publicly available online by attending a council meeting, whether as a proponent or objector addressing the council, or as an observer or another interested party. Members of the public consent to this, the use of their image, voice and personal information. Councillors, I move on to attendance and apologies. Councillor Quinn is joining us on Zoom. He may flitter in and out depending on whether he gets Wi-Fi. He's overseas at the moment, so please bear with us whilst we manage that situation. But I believe, is Councillor Quinn on? No? He may join us soon, which will be minuted. There are no other apologies. Councillors, any declarations of interest? If not, I'll move on to item 1, confirmations of minutes of ordinary meeting 4516 held 27 February 2023. Anyone move? Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I happened to notice that Councillor Prieston's vote has not been recorded from resolution 015/23.
On which page, Councillor?
That's on page 9 of the minutes. That's through until resolution number 020-723. Page 10 of the minutes.
Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Preston might be confirming. You may have left the room, Councillor.
I did.
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson, on page 7, it says that I left the meeting at 6:58 p.m. and then
Returned.
never returned. No, 7:20 p.m.
7:20. And Councillor Williams also left the meeting on a declaration of interest, I believe, during that time, but we've retained quorum. So that answers that question. Councillor, any other questions or queries? If not, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. I'll move on to item 3.1, local planning panel appointments.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
this is Mr.
Councillor.
Rising. May I just raise one?
You may.
I notice there's no reference here in relation to, and this doesn't reflect at all on the Councillor Pressley, but more on the administration of council. There's no reference here to the deputy mayor's role, and the Councillor Pressley is referred to as the deputy mayor. The resolution that was passed by council in February last year was that the deputy mayor's role would cease on the first meeting in 2023, which is the February meeting. Is there an intent to leave that position vacant, or are we going to have a ballot at some?
I will check that, councillor, but I believe we'll have that checked and brought back to council, but I'm not sure of the protocol there. We'll have that checked and come back to you, and if so, we can bring that to the next meeting of council.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other business arising? Councillor Sanderson, your motion, notices of motions 3.1, local planning panel appointments. Councillor Sanderson moved.
Thanks, Mayor. I could instead move the item to 4.17.
No. Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Those in any discussion? If not, any those in favour? Against, that is carried. We'll now move to late item 4.17, report on the status of the LEP and DCP, and call our first speaker on that item being Mrs. Heather Armstrong. Ms. Armstrong, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I acknowledge
3 minutes, sorry. 3 minutes.
I thought it was 3. Thank you. I acknowledge the Wadamadigal people and pay my respect to the elders, past and present, and acknowledge their ancient culture and wisdom. Initially, I note the very late edition of these items, 4.17 and 4.19 on Friday. This is not the first time very significant matters like this have been placed on the agenda on a Friday before a Monday meeting. And I just note that this is not a practice which we would want to encourage or see repeated. With regard to 4.17, former Planning Minister Roberts has progressively weakened democratic participation in planning over the last 10 years of a Liberal government. You're all aware of that because you've been excluded from planning decisions yourselves. Local planning panels are now replaced anything to do with significant matters or sensitive matters, and that includes Big Tree Park. So previous government has intensified its pro-development agenda with this new state environmental planning policy amendment, Land Use Zones 2022, due to come into effect on 26th of April. This new step is very significant. It redefines business zones as employment zones, changes permitted land uses to intensify commercial uses, and encourages more development in existing business zones. Its effect is to change zones to allow greater density and more commercial uses. It has the capacity and potential to change our built environment and the allowed activities in our suburb. It is an important measure. It will permit expanded land uses and create a risk that developers will attempt to exploit this category in significant areas such as the Garibaldi Village and Woolwich Corner Village. Is it the case that Hunters Hill Council staff did not consult with the state government or its own councillors about this change during the consultation period from 31st of May 2022 to 12 July 2022? The community knew nothing and was not consulted. We seek full disclosure as to why Hunters Hill Council has not informed the community about these changes from 2021 until this month. The Department of Planning, in consultation with councils, finalised the proposed amendments, explaining the process in their document entitled Employment Zones Reform Implementation, dated May 2022. Did Hunters Hill Council take part in that consultation or not? These are questions that we need answers to as citizens and ratepayers. We need to correct this undemocratic situation by requesting the New South Wales Government to allow a period of proper consultation with the Hunters Hill community about this new proposed draft SEP, State Environmental Planning Policy. Those are my questions. I think the community is entitled to answers.
Thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. I can confirm that Hunters Hill Council did make a submission at the time, and I can confirm that councillors were briefed at the time. So I might pass to the General Manager to elaborate further on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. We do have our strategic planner on the line as well, if councillors would like to ask questions there. I'll just actually go to the paper, and with regard to the Speaker's comment about late papers, we made it very clear to our councillors that with both the LEP, DCP review and Victory Park that we needed to have detailed discussions with the Department of Planning prior to writing these reports, and that does take time, and that's the reason for that. I'll just actually reiterate what the Mayor said. So prior to my time, because I only started 12 months ago, the elected members at the time were advised by the General Manager of the day about these changes. And I will also stress that two things, that one, and that communicated to the councillors is actually still on our website today. So this actually started in April 2021 when this SEP was first raised. Secondly, we have an organisation called NESROC, which is the collective of the neighbouring councillors, so Ryde, Hornsby, Lane Cove, etc. And the SEP, the public consultation responsibility for SEPs lies with the state government, not council. And none of those councils held any public consultation. So I think it's important to know that. And that's where it sits. It started well before my time. Councillors were advised by the General Manager of the day, and no other council held any public consultation because it was their view that the process of public consultation lies with the state government. That's their responsibility.
Councillors, any other questions of Ms. Armstrong? If not, thank you, Ms. Armstrong. I now call Dr. Alastair Sharp. Second speaker. Dr. Sharp, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to address you about this. With reference to tonight's papers, I'm speaking on behalf of the Hunters Hill Trust at the moment, not personally. With reference to tonight's council papers, we've raised some serious matters regarding apparent inaccuracies that point to standards of professionalism, or lack of it, record keeping, competency and integrity. And the first matter relates to the claim that other NESROC councils did not consult with their communities. We have evidence that both Lane Cove and Mosman councils that indicates otherwise. And we'd be happy to share this with council so that this matter can be confirmed. Nevertheless, we point out that this claim is no justification for our own council to fail to advise the community, as is required under our community engagement policy and also under the Local Government Act. Surely this is a breach of council and state government policies and requirements. Our second point is that some organisations and individuals have been referenced as being consulted recently about the LEP and DCP review. And the consultations included meetings with CAP, with Hunters Hill Trust, John Cole, Russell Young, and local architects. But why is it that the local architects have not been listed either by company name or as individuals? This is surely not setting the same standards for transparency. Our third point concerns the statement in council papers regarding the notification of councillors of the SEP as being made on the 1st of April by the General Manager's weekly bulletin. Those papers state that Hunters Hill Council's elected members were advised of legislative planning reforms, including changes from business zones to employment zones in April 2021 by the then General Manager. This communique also stated as being published on Council's website as part of Council Weekly Bulletin on the 1st of April. But a check of Council's weekly bulletins, which are available on the website, indicates that this advice was published only 1 month later, not on the 1st of April, but on the 7th of May, which was just 2 days prior to closing of the exhibition period for the 7th. As there's no visibility via council papers of this important planning matter, we can't know for sure what communications there may have been, but they were certainly not made public, which leads to the question as to why this was not raised more publicly via a proper briefing note to councillors as part of a council meeting. Now, councillors may or may not have been briefed appropriately, and some councillors may have been made more aware than others, but the community certainly was not advised of these changes. And councillors may be forgiven for missing this major planning.
Alice, Dr. Sharp, extension of time, move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any dissent? If not, all those in favour, against, carried.
Councillors may be forgiven for missing this major planning reform if the communication was simply via Council's weekly bulletin, as that very brief paper does not actually highlight the potential implications. So why is the Hunts Hill Trust concerned about the way this has been presented? Well, the very stated intent of the change, changing zones from B1 to E1, is listed under the slogan, making it easier for business. By facilitating high levels of development. These changes are simply inappropriate to our suburbs and centres, and there's a real risk that developers will attempt to exploit this category and challenge controls to achieve even greater densities in areas that already suffer from traffic and parking congestion. But more importantly, the change will erode the character, heritage and amenity of our municipality, which our community has long fought to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Before we jump into questions, I will ask either the strategic planner through the General Manager or Sharam, does the E1 zoning come with any change to floor space ratio, height or heritage? Kieran? Yep.
You've explained already.
Sorry, Dr. Sharp, sorry. We'll just let the strategic planner answer that question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. No is the answer.
No, it doesn't.
No.
No change to floor space ratio, no change to density, no change to height, and no change to heritage.
No.
No, thank you. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Vergara.
The councillor bulletin that you refer to, which the paper says was published on this in April, you say was published on the 7th of May, is that right?
Yes.
The consultation, the exhibition and consultation period in 2021 ran till the end of June. It was the consultation period. It was published on the 7th of May. There's at least 4 weeks.
Thank you for that information.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Prieston.
Can I ask a question to the General Manager?
You may.
Mr. Mayor. You may not be able to answer this, but would you think that, as is stated in the 1st of April Councillor Bulletin, attaching the New South Wales Government's 2021 Planning and Public Spaces Outlook document, which says, and I will paraphrase it, to support the reduction of planning proposal assessment timeframes and streamline processes, we're working on a range of planning proposal process improvements. These include developing local plan making guidelines to replace current planning proposal and local environment plan guidelines to provide clearer guidance to councils and proponents. And it goes on. There's a lot of detail, obviously, that touches the entire state government report. So would you suggest that that was sufficient notice to the councillors at the time of the state government's intention to make various amendments to the SEP and LEP?
Well,
General Manager.
thank you for the question, Councillor Prieston. Yeah, I think the first thing I need to say is it's very difficult for me to make comment on something when I was not here. So this obviously occurred prior to my appointment. What I can say is that the general manager of the day obviously has communicated it clearly to the elected members, and I have had a look at that attachment, and in that councillor weekly bulletin, and one would suspect that and expect that as a general manager, that when communiques are sent to elected members that they are read. That's a fair expectation. If you look at that attachment, and again, I wasn't here, but if you look at that attachment, it's a very detailed and comprehensive attachment. It wasn't just about that SEP. There was various other SEPs in it as well, and it was fairly clear in an overarching statement of what the parameters were of those respective SEPs.
Okay, well, in light of that, I'll just direct you to that 1 April 2021 Councillor Bulletin, Dr. Sharp, and maybe you can have a read of that state government.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions of Dr. Sharp? Councillor Bagara.
You've looked at that bulletin, you're aware that it includes the explanation of intended effects, a link to that document, also includes a link to the searchable web tool to readily identify local changes and make specific submissions, and the proposed translation associated detail relevant to local areas.
May I respond?
It's a searchable web tool.
Yes,
and
it's a
the
question, Dr.
explanation
Sharp.
of intended effects.
I think the question is really, did any of the councillors take that opportunity, or was it not made sufficiently clear that they noticed it?
It's a publication on the website to the public is what I'm saying, and it included links to
I don't
those
doubt that.
things.
Councillors, any other questions of Dr. Sharp? Councillor Sanderson.
I'm Dr. Sharp, the General Manager's office.
Mate.
I didn't actually have that document in my hard drive. I did look at it. And there was a heading there, employment zone forms. The only real explanation that I saw was that a couple of sentences here, the current form of B and IN zones, first comprehensive refresh of the zone system says so. I couldn't see any other further reference. Councillor Bagara is right that there was a link on that page. The difficulty was that because the document was an image rather than recognisable text, the link did not work. And also the link did not give the URL, so you would have had to do other searches in order to find it.
Sorry, Councillor, is there a question? Is there, Councillor, is there a question in this? Yes.
Given the brevity of that in that particular document, would you not believe that a matter that does impact on Hunts Hill, to whatever extent, as slight as it may well be, that it is appropriate for councillors not to be briefed directly on the matter rather than relying on a link that does not work?
General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a really hard question for me to answer. I'll try my best. So I'll just deal in fact. When I was made aware of that SEP at the recent town hall meeting, I went back and looked at some previous documents because, to be fair, I wasn't aware of that document at that point in time. Now, all I can say is that when I clicked on the attachment that was sent by the General Manager in April 21, that attachment, when I went to open it, clearly opened, and it was pages and pages and pages of SEPs. It was all in colour, beautifully presented. And then to answer the second part to your question, Councillor Sanderson, is that if something like that came up under my watch, in addition to a councillor weekly bulletin, yes, I would raise it with councillors at a briefing.
Councillors, any other questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
I'll now call, as Mr. Greg Watson requested, we read out his
Mr. Mayor,
submission.
Mr. Watson submitted to speak tonight, and then late this afternoon advised council that he was unable to attend, and he's requested that an officer, which I'm happy to do, to read out his statement. So I'll begin. This is in written form. I'm speaking in support of the motion to approach the New South Wales State Government for a deferral of the implementation date of the State Environment Planning Policy Amendment Land Use Zones 2022, leading to amendment of the current Hunters Hill LEP. According to the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment website, the department invited stakeholders from May 2022 until July 2022 to have their say on the proposed amendments to individual LEPs across New South Wales. We, the community, are stakeholders. Mr. Metcalf, as in Kieran Metcalf, our strategic planner, who's online this evening, has already confirmed in his report that the Hunters Hill Council did not conduct community consultation prior to lodging submissions with the state government. He also points out that many other councils did not conduct community consultation. However, nowhere is it stated in Mr. Metcalf's report that this community, Hunters Hill, wanted to forgo their right to community participation as defined in the New South Wales Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, and to forgo our say as was the intent of the Department of Planning and Environment. If Hunters Hill Council is aware that many other councils did not follow due process and do not offer their communities the opportunity to participate in these decisions, then doesn't Hunters Hill Council have a duty of care to bring this information to the attention of the department? I strongly believe this is necessary for council to request for a proposed postponement to the implementation date of these amendments, 26 April 23, so that the Hunters Hill community can have a say in the changes to the LEP, strengthen the documents, and to add local objectives to the mandated objectives, as well as strengthen the Hunters Hill LEP to prevent unwarranted outcomes. The community wants to ensure that future developments are appropriate and include the garden suburb character that is Hunters Hill. This community participation is outright under the Act and the intent of the department. I also strongly recommend that Hunters Hill Council brings to the attention of the Department of Planning and Environment the fact that a number of councils did not engage in community participation and that many of the approved documents may therefore be approved. Greg Watson, 68 Park Road, Hunters Hill.
Thank you. I'll now call Ms. Karen Raisin on the written. Yes, if you like. Yes. Sorry, Councillor. Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Acting General Manager. I'm just concerned that I want to be sure that this council has not breached any, code of conduct or due process, as to use the words in that submission. So I ask you, is it a contravention of due process for those NESROC councils to have not consulted the community on the state government's proposed amendments to SEP's LEPs? Or is this what you were referring to earlier when you said that the consultation process obligation in terms of an actual duty was on the state government to consult with the communities rather than the councils?
Thank you, Councillor Prieston, for your question. The answer is no, and I'll just reiterate what I said before. The public consultation process is driven for SEPs by the state government, not local council.
So it's not a contravention of due process.
No.
On behalf of the NESROC councils. Okay, thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, Karen, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Raisin. I'm a concerned resident from Barons Crescent, and I also speak tonight as a committee member of Hunters Hill Trust in relation to agenda item 4.17 regarding the state environmental planning policy to create employment zones in Hunters Hill. Now, the community only really learned about these significant SEP amendments at the town hall meeting on the 15th of March, primarily through another resident who spoke about the detrimental impact and precedents that the zoning changes may create for our LEP and DCP. We were all very surprised that we hadn't been informed or consulted about the commencement of employment zones sooner, given the public exhibition period was May 31 to July 12, 2022, and rather dismayed that the changes had been gazetted to come into force on 26th of April 2023. And also shocked to learn that some councillors and council staff were also caught off guard by this information. I'd like to emphasise that we're not really interested in hearing a blame game here tonight, but about why the community was not informed, nor do we want to hear any excuses. Primarily, we're looking for solutions. In hearing a blame game, that's just not on. We really want to see where we can go forward. You are our democratically elected councillors, and we look to you to fix this issue and expect the highest standards of behaviour, transparency and management in accordance with council and state government policies and requirements. Now, we already have had confirmation that there have been several communications over the past year between the Department of Planning and Hunters Hill Council about these set changes. So this fact isn't really deniable. However, what we're asking for now is, can this mistake be fixed? What is the advice from council staff about how this major oversight can be managed going forward? Will council urgently confirm to the community that it has requested a postponement of the SEP amendment due to be implemented on 26th of April, and as was reported recently in the Weekly Times? Will council make representations to the new planning minister? Are the existing Hunters Hill LEP controls defensible in court against the new SEP when it comes in? Can council undertake to either not approve anything until the new amendments to the LEP can be legislated, or defer all determinations within the proposed E1 zones until the LEP review has been completed? Now, I do understand from your comment earlier, Mayor, that you can give assurances now that the floor space ratios and the height requirements.
Mr. Rosen, movement extension of time. Councillor Prieston, seconded Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Thank you. Where was I? That the E1 zones going forward will meet the floor space ratios and the height requirements, and they will remain the same. Is that correct? However, will council now take responsibility for the actions or the lack of actions of previous staff? And can council clearly now articulate to the community the actions that it will be taking going forward? We're looking for accountability, transparency, and open governance by competent staff and councillors. These are the responsibilities that council has to the community of Hunters Hill, because at the moment we seriously feel let down by our council. We expect council to protect the interests of all residents against those who would look to exploit the new E1 zoning. So the current values of the LEP and DCP, they must be retained and they must be strengthened to protect the character and heritage of our municipality going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosen. If you could just stay there for questions. I will just say that you do and will have transparency throughout this whole process. In fact, the consultation that we had the other evening is the start of many consultations that we'll be having in the months and maybe years to come, but most likely months. It's not a process that we're required to do under the Act, but it is a commitment that this council's made to consult with the community before preparing any planned amendments to the LEP or the DCP, because we want to hear your feedback. So you have openness and transparency, particularly from this council. I can't speak to the last council or any other staff that have left the organisation, but I can commit to full transparency. Annie will come up in a moment and give us a full overview of the process moving forward, which the staff have spent a lot of time working on. But before I do, I'll just throw to councillors 2 questions. Councillors, any questions of Ms. Rosen?
I think.
Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. There were a couple of questions in your statement. Would you just read those questions out?
Again, there were quite a few. Can
just
this
the questions for?
Yes, okay. So can council now fix this mistake in relation to what the matter has been of no public consultation at all? And I must say, I read the FAQs about the implementation, and it clearly states there that the public exhibition period has to happen before amendments can go. What is the advice from council staff about how this major oversight can now be managed? Will council urgently confirm to the community that it has requested a postponement of the SEP coming into play on the 26th of April, as reported in the paper last week? That was a headline, 11th hour. Will council make representations to the new planning minister? Are the existing LEP controls defensible in court against the new SEP? can council undertake to either not approve anything until new amendments to the LEP can be legislated, or defer all determinations within the proposed E1 zones until the LEP review has been completed? My question I had to alter for the next one was because you have confirmed tonight and given assurance that the current floor space ratios and height requirements will remain the same for any E1 zones. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
always,
Yep.
that's always correct.
Will council take responsibility for the actions or the lack of actions of previous staff? So we're talking about solutions going forward, not right. And can council now clearly articulate to the community the actions that it will be taking?
Thank you. Right.
Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Off that, my question is through you. If anyone has any questions.
Sorry, Ms. Raisin, sorry, if you could just remain at the.
Remain, okay.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
As per the article and previous discussions with you, has the department been contacted?
Yes, the staff have contacted the department. They've been in discussions post the feedback from the other night about a potential postponement. Have we written to the new minister? No, because we don't actually have a minister at the moment. The government-elect is obviously only 48 hours old. I can commit that I'm certainly happy to do that. But in relation to the other questions and queries, it would probably be helpful if you could send those through, and some of the questions, and a lot of them I dare say will be answered tonight when Ms Goodman actually rolls through the timeline and what the proposal is. The requirement for public consultation you referred to before is a legislative requirement for the proposed planning proposal, but we're actually conducting consultation before we even get to that point. So the consultation that you're talking about, we're actually going over and beyond that by many measures, like what happened last week, and there will be a thought through process that Ms Goodman will outline in a moment. But that's the commitment of this council going forward.
Terrific.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions? If not, we will call up Suzette Zilic. Thank you, Suzette. You have 3 minutes.
So, in order for the community to provide meaningful input to the current LEP review process, we need to first understand the changes that have been made to the LEP since this last review. An example of such a change is the soon-to-be introduced employment zones, which have been described by the state government as its first significant reform since the standard instrument was repaired 15 years ago. While the reforms were a state government directive introduced in 2021, councils had the responsibility to translate the employment zones to suit their local government areas. Councils did this during the implementation phase of the reforms that took place in 2022. Information obtained from the Department of Planning confirms that Hunters Hill Council corresponded with the department multiple times over the implementation period, with the latest correspondence dated 6th of December 2022. This is 10 days prior to the December legislative changes. This correspondence confirms that council was informed of the employment zones being introduced into Hunters Hill's LEP. Whereas at the recent town hall meeting, this issue was brought to council's attention, where councillors indicated surprisingly no knowledge of the reforms. The question that must be asked of council is why such a significant change to the LEP zoning was not brought to the attention of the community. All surrounding council areas such as Mossman, Willoughby, Ryde, Canada Bay and Lane Cove have made their communities aware of the zoning changes via notifications, and their submissions to the department were made publicly available. In their submissions, all these councils raised concerns about the reforms. Many of them, particularly Mossman, put safeguards in place to minimise the risks to their municipality's character and heritage by rezoning sensitive areas, strengthening zoning objectives and height controls, and changing permitted land uses within employment zones. A review of Hunters Hill's LEP legislation reveals our council has simply accepted state government changes and nothing was done about it. This is not an acceptable outcome, as it leaves our council area vulnerable and exposed to inappropriate development and puts at risk the character and heritage we value so highly in our municipality. These risks have further heightened as the current development controls in the DCP have not been strengthened and are open to challenge by developers. My question for council is, in the event that the Department of Planning does not grant a deferral for the commencement date of the legislative changes to the LEP, which is 30 days from now, what actions will council take to safeguard our municipality from inappropriate development within employment zones, such as Garibaldi?
So that I move extension of time, Councillor Sanders, and second, Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, Suzette.
And Woolwich Corner villages, etc. How will Hunters Hill's heritage and character be protected in the absence of strengthened development controls in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Suzette. Councillors, any questions of Suzette? Thank you. I'll call our next speaker, our last speaker on this item, Mr. Robert Hayes. Thank you, Robert. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. At the community meeting on the 15th of March regarding the review of the Hunters Hill LEP, there was discussion from the floor, as we've heard, regarding the State Environmental Planning Policy Amendment, Land Use Zones 2022. I'll shorten that to SEP A22. This policy amendment, which will affect the Hunters Hill LEP, has already been made by the New South Wales Governor, signed off by the Minister for Planning, published on the 16th of December 2022, and commences, as we've heard, on the 26th of April 2023. Unfortunately, without Hunters Hill community consultation having occurred at any stage. At that community meeting, some councillors suggested that a motion could be put to council, namely a formal request to the New South Wales Government that it grants a deferral of the enactment of SEP A22 to allow the opportunity for the required consultation by Hunters Hill Council with the local community. It also allows the LEP review to improve the LEP's safeguards before SEP A22 commences. I would strongly support such a deferred motion and resolution. I'm a long-time member of the local community and part of community groups concerned that possible changes to the LEP may allow or even promote potentially inappropriate development impacting on the character, identity and integrity of existing established neighbourhoods in Hunters Hill. This would directly contravene the primary stated aim and objectives of the current LEP. I strongly believe that deferring enactment is necessary. Firstly, to prevent developers from immediately taking advantage of the land use changes from 26 April. And secondly, to allow proper community consultation regarding SEP A22 to be carried out by the council. It is also essential that the current Hunters Hill LEP review takes SEP A22 into account, and conversely, the wording of SEP A22 should take into account any new provisions and safeguards of a revised Hunters Hill LEP. Both of these things require time, hence the need for a pause in enactment. Finally, Mr. Metcalfe's report on the LEP DCP review states, and I quote, Council made the required submission via the planning portal to the Department of Planning on 31 January 2022 in response to the review of the draft final instrument provided by the Department of Planning. Given the absence of community consultation, I respectfully request that for transparency, Hunters Hill Council makes its 31 January 22 submission available to the public and to councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Councillors, any questions of Mr. Hayes? Not? Thank you.
Good.
That concludes our speakers, councillors. I might I might move the motion myself with the amendment of a point two that, as has been suggested by some speakers, that we write to the department and to the incoming minister once confirmed that Huntersville Council seeks to have a extension to the implementation of E1 zones. So if I could just pull that up, and I apologise.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
I have a motion here that would cover that quite adequately.
We can hear that after we've just dealt with this. There's a seconder to that motion, Councillor Vergara.
Joys of technology.
The recommendation part two would read that council that that the mayor, sorry, writes to the Department of Planning and, once confirmed, new Minister for Planning to seek a stay of the new E1 zoning until the completion of the LEP DCP review. Thank you, Sarah. Councillors, we have a motion on the floor. Any speakers for the motion? Against the motion, Councillor Williams.
I have an amendment.
Yes, if you wish.
I would add to that that to at the end there to allow adequate consultation with its community. I'd also I think I've got a much more eloquent motion here, but it's not a matter. I'd remove the new minister. We need to do it urgently because
It's both the new minister and the department.
Well, to the government and the department, because if you wait till a new minister, Mr. Mayor, it'll be all over. So I would suggest that it needs to read Minister for Planning to defer the implementation of the government's employment zone reforms to enable council to adequately consult with its community. To have in there a provision that you have to wait for a new minister, I just don't accept.
Councillor, that's not the intent nor the practical application of the motion that's on the floor. It's in addition to. Are you speaking against the motion or are you proposing an amendment?
I said, Mr. Mayor, I'm moving an amendment.
Moving an amendment, okay.
I've got some more amendments as well. But
sorry, councillor, we'll just get this right so that we can actually have a debate. So the recommendation that's on the floor is there. The amendment would be, could you please read it out, councillor?
The council resolved to formally request.
Sorry, so that we can get the minutes correct, could we just read it slowly so that we can get the minutes
The
taken
staff
properly?
actually
Yes.
have it on this.
Have the staff got this? Let me pull that up on screen.
We only received these at private.
It's number two.
Okay,
Of my,
councillor,
it's
yep.
number two of my proposed.
Councillor, can you just read out the whole motion, the whole proposed amendment?
Well, the proposed amendment to the motion includes a broader canvas than just what has been in yours. The first one is that council receive and note the report with the need to acknowledge that the community meeting of the 15th of March clearly stated the importance of the tree canopy in garden settings. B, that the reference to the property strategy in the community infrastructure plan clearly be identified as draft reports. Then getting to the nub of what your motion is. 2, resolve to formally request the Minister for Planning to defer the implementation of the government's employment zone reforms to enable council to adequately consult its community. And 3, the council planning processes be reviewed and reported back to council to ensure that any future state environmental planning policy set is reported formally to council and allows for adequate community consultation.
Thank you, councillor. That's
my
the amendment. Just a question. Your second motion would tie us to the appointment of a new minister, which could happen in the next week, could happen in 4 weeks' time. We're not quite sure. Whereas the original motion would not tie us to that appointment.
Oh, well, if that's unclear,
just in terms of the timing. Request the government?
Yeah, rather than.
Okay. Councillor, is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Williams, who'd like to speak to your amendment.
Well, do you want to speak to your motion first?
No, this is the amendment on the floor.
Oh, you should have spoken to your motion. Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I find this process tonight quite extraordinary. We've got a situation where council has and staff have made decisions or lack of decisions, and this council is being totally defensive and doesn't really gather the gravity, and nor is there an apology to the community for what has taken place. There's this perception that because something appears in a bulletin or whatever, then that is adequate for council, for the community to comprehend the potential implications of those. One would expect in a situation where there is a zoning change that council would receive a formal report from its staff advising of the pros and cons, the implications of the proposal in the set. None of that took place, and it's all very well in hindsight to say, well, it was in the bulletin, so you should know. It is the responsibility of council to formally consider things of this gravity. To sort of say that, oh, NESROC did X, Y, and Z, NESROC is a collective. It's not a decision maker on behalf of council. And I expect anything that's decided at NESROC needs to come back for ratification of this council. It's not a decision-making body for this community. The timing of the process, I think, has, and this is moving on to this issue of the LEP review, which there is a diagram in the report that says that things are going to progress. That timing doesn't allow for adequate community consultation in this current review. We don't even know how extensive the review is going to be. Is it a basic standard or data? That's never been put in the documents. At the end of this month, we're moving into the drafting of the planning proposal. I don't think that is a genuine community consultation. And I've said time and time again, council operates sometimes with this veil of secrecy. We have these briefing sessions, which the community is not aware of. We have this chronicle now, which used to be the bulletin, which has floated up and appears out in the community and on the website. But it is the business of council to do it in the chamber so that councillors are aware of the issues, the implications, and make a formal decision. The community can then participate in the process. And I again urge council to be more transparent in its processes and ensure that these sort of issues are brought to council. It's a responsibility of staff to do that. and at the same time, give the community the opportunity to be engaged in it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Any other speakers against the amendment? For the amendment? For the amendment, councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I concur with the reasoning of councillor Williams. I have concern. We speak about openness and transparency. In this council, we've had a system of requests. I made a request on the 13th of this month, a fortnight ago, passing on the inquiries of the facility. Part of that has been answered in response. At the end of that request, I also asked that whether council made a submission to DPE regarding the merger of B1 and B2 zoning into expanded E2 zoning. If so, can a copy of that submission be provided to councillors? Now, since that time, it's come out that there was, in fact, a submission on the 31st of January, and I do accept at that point in time the new council had only just been sworn in, and that we will yet to have a formal meeting. But at the time, I would have expected that there would have been some kind of a briefing to make councillors aware of what was happening. It would appear, or according to the facility, we're hearing that there is other correspondence. So I perhaps wonder whether we could add a further point to Councillor Williams' motion, and that is that all correspondence regarding this matter or between council and Department of Planning and Environment be made available to councillors, and an appropriate correspondence based on confidential nature be made available to the public at large.
I'd be happy to include that in the amendment.
You'll have to formalise that, councillor.
Oh, I have.
You haven't, because the wording of the amendment, the change to the amendment would have to be scripted down. So if you would like to propose, councillor Williams, an amendment that to an accepted change to your amendment, you may, if your seconder is happy with that.
Yes, part 4 would be to make available to the public all non-confidential documentation and correspondence relating to the discussions or relating to communication and decisions, communication with the department and other bodies, other relevant bodies.
Is what is on the screen your proposed change to your amendments, councillor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Is that accepted by the seconder? Yes, that is the amendment then. Councillors, any other speakers against the amendment? For the amendment? Right reply, councillor.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to offer an apology to the community for not being engaged in this process right at day one. It is a regrettable thing that council didn't see the gravity, nor did the staff go through what I believe should have been the appropriate steps of providing a report to the council meeting. So having said that, Mr. Mayor, I think the thing is self-explanatory that we need to tomorrow urgently send off a letter to the government, so it's on the desk for the minister, and more importantly is within the department as early as possible. It is important that we try our best efforts to get a deferral, to make sure that the community does have the opportunity, as has had at other councils. the opportunities to be engaged in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll now put the amendment, all that.
Mayor, can we please just have
Have the amendment on the screen.
Thank you.
For an abundance of clarity, I'll read the amendment that receive and note the report with the need to acknowledge that A, the community meeting on the 15th of March clearly stated the importance of the tree canopy and garden setting. B, the reference to the property strategy and community infrastructure plan clearly be identified as draft reports. 2, resolve formally to request the Minister for Planning to defer the implementation of the government's employment zone reforms to enable council to adequately consult with its community. Part 3, planning processes be reviewed and reported back to council to ensure at a future state environmental planning policy is reported formally to the council and allows for adequate community consultation. And that 4, to make available to the public all non-confidential documentation correspondence relating to the communication to the department and other relevant bodies.
Mr. Mayor, I did change the Minister for Planning to the government.
The government in point 2.
There isn't any.
Yeah. In point 2, can we change Minister for Planning to government? State.
Planning.
Yeah. That's fine. Okay, that captures it, I think. If you're happy, Councillor.
Yes.
Yes. That is the motion. That is the amendment on the floor.
Sorry.
Juggling a few screens. And
We're about to.
Zooms.
It's about to be put, not debated. Councillor Preston.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we are about to vote on it.
Yes.
And so what I would
Do you
like
have
to
any
see
questions?
is the original motion that will.
The original motion. So can we go? Can we go up?
Motion is lost.
This will. Oh,
This amendment is lost.
If the amendment's lost, the motion
Motion
will
that
be the
stands,
first motion, which is
which you added an amendment
Yes,
to.
There it is there.
Yes, that's it there.
Thank you.
Councillors, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? I'll do that again. All those in favour of the amendment? Against? That is carried. That becomes the motion. Any other debate, councillors? Councillor Vergara speaking for.
Yes,
Yes.
I voted for the motion, but the point I want to make is we're talking about accountability and responsibility. And while Councillor Williams apologised, it seemed a bit tongue in cheek. Now, I'm a new councillor. At no point during 2022 did any of the councillors who were aware of this issue from April 2021 raise this set issue. At no point. There was no report called for. There was no briefing called for. There was no motion put. This is an oversight. It is one that Councillor Williams, as the mayor at the time, and the deputy mayor ought to take some responsibility for. We're talking about accountability and responsibility, openness and transparency. Then let's identify the root cause of the oversight or the mistake and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Against the motion?
I can speak in response to that.
Councillor Williams
For the motion.
for the motion.
I'm not going to enter into retribution or whatever in terms of this process. Councillor Tatiana Vergara wasn't at the council at that time. It is an issue that wasn't brought to a council meeting, wasn't provided except for a minor, except for a briefing note, a bulletin report. It is a bit rich to blame me as mayor and the deputy mayor for something that, in my view, was something the staff didn't provide the necessary support and report to council. And I do apologise on behalf of council because
Councillor, can you please direct your discussion through the chair, not to the gallery?
I've just had to turn
Yes,
so what
yeah,
that way. Yes, so it is a collective apology, not an individual one. It's one that reflects the need for this council to move forward. There seems to have been a lot of retribution around around this room today and a lot of defensive. I think we need to be open enough to recognise there has been an error made and that collectively we move forward and help the community as much as we can to be engaged in the process. So I think it's a bit rich to sort of start singling out individuals. It is a collective responsibility, and that responsibility needs to be taken seriously and respectfully to the community.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers against the motion? For the motion? Sorry, councillor Prieston.
Thank you. The reason that I voted against the amended motion, which became the motion, was purely because I believe it's fully drafted. And having reviewed that on the fly, it's a bit difficult to ascertain all the potential implications of the way that it was drafted. In terms of the intent, and this is a broader issue than the motion before us tonight, I just want to express that there is not this overarching cabal of a lack of transparency which this council has taken to this issue. That, as I mentioned to a few members of the public after the public consultation 2 weeks ago, I agree that we need to take this process forward from this point now with transparency and with considering all of the issues that the community is aware of and is concerned of. So I just want to make it clear that there isn't this us versus you thing, and I just think that the tone of this discussion has turned into an assumption that the councillors and the council staff have gone about this process, and I'm talking about the current council and the current council staff, has gone about this process with a lack of transparency on purpose for some unbeknown reason. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Frassor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Williams. Though I do agree with Councillor Vigara, it was a little tricky to watch it on the fly, but I think the intent of your amendments, which I would have liked to have seen earlier today, but I think the intent is correct. And when we spoke on the phone and I expressed my concerns to you, I'm glad to see that you brought them. I'm happy to see that the Mayor was also listening at the community meeting and was also willing to bring the concern about this set to the community. To the government. I will just say, a little continuing on from Councillor Prieston's comment, I was on the previous council. I won't apologise on behalf of council because that's not my role and it would be inappropriate for me to do so. I'll apologise on my behalf. I was made aware of the councillor bulletin, having pressed for the last couple of weeks to know if councillors had ever been made aware about this. And I was told, yes, it's in a councillor bulletin and it's on the website. So I scrolled around for quite some time looking for that bulletin and finally found it in May. And it's on page 43 of a 48-page bulletin. There's a brief note about this state change, and the date on that bulletin was on the 7th of May. We got the bulletin and it said submissions closed on the 9th of May. So from my general manager at the time, I would have assumed that if there were really important things that we as a council needed to be concerned about, the process had been gone through, submissions were closing in 2 days. But I will also say what was going on at that time. The meeting held just before that was a 540-page agenda, which included a motion to reduce landfill, a motion to review potholes, a motion regarding community facility at Boronia Park, regarding reviewing the nighttime economy in Hunters Hill, motion to amend the model code of conduct, to make submissions to the Office of Local Government, draft Hunters Hill housing strategy, outcomes of public exhibition, Boronia Park sports and community facility, draft community infrastructure plan, and I'm only up to item 4.3 out of 4.19. We had a very full agenda that month. Again, no excuse to have missed the ball on this item that I read in a bulletin on page 43 of a 48-page bulletin, but I can see how we missed it and it never came up again. My question for the now General Manager would be, and I 100% believe that wouldn't happen on his watch, but my question for him would be, would it be normal for a submission to the Department of Planning to go through without having come to council in a briefing, let alone as in a meeting, I highly doubt it. And I expect his answer would be the same, which you're welcome to confirm one way or the other if you like, or you're welcome to decline. But so, as Ms. Raisin commented earlier, we can thrash around in the dark accusing the mayor at the time and the general manager at the time for not communicating clearly with council. We can thrash around about secrecy and lack of transparency. We can waste a lot of time doing that, but I really appreciate that what we're going to do first and foremost is call the department and get on the front foot with this going forward. I think that some of the issues in the set, which I now have had a little look at, now that I am fully aware of it, I think that some of the issues have potentially been blown out of proportion because of our fear of it, because we feel we were kept in the dark about it. And I totally appreciate that. You think you're being kept in the dark, therefore there must be something sinister. But I do think that we need the time as a council and as a community to consult on it. We've got the time because we're already working on our LEP and DCP. And as we all know, Ms. Goodman has a really well-structured, well-thought-out communication and consultation process for that going forward. So I would offer my apology. I hope that you take it with some understanding of the role that we play in this very small part-time job that we do in our lives as parents and employed people, as well as being councillors. So I do hope you take it as a heartfelt and honest one. I look forward to hearing from the department, and fingers crossed we'll get somewhere. And I know Hunters Hill, I know there'll be action if we don't, but we do need to educate ourselves more about this. And so I'm hoping that we see from the general manager and from the appropriate officer, apologies for not directing to the council, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
I was.
from the appropriate officer, a full briefing, which we do deserve as a council, so that we can support the general manager and his leadership team to make good submissions on behalf of us and our community.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion for, against? I won't take right of reply. I should take I'll just say that the commentary around writing to the department, I have absolutely no issue with. Generally, that motion is not only the spirit in which council is going to undertake the process, but is undertaking the process. The department has already been contacted about this issue. There is correspondence, as I understand it, going back and forward with it, the discussion being for a stay or an extension to the application of the E1 zoning. So I'm looking forward to getting that formalised from council if this motion goes through, and we can see what other advocacy we can take to the department and the new government in that respect. That being said, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. I assume Councillor Clinton. Councillors, I'll now go to item 4.18, Victory Park. There is a motion and two recommendations. Have I got a mover? Councillor Williams.
Are there no speakers for this?
Oh, there is.
Yes,
Apologies.
Once there's spoken, I'd like to move the motion on that.
I don't think that's the order of.
Sorry, it's was that someone joining on Zoom? Apologies. Trevor, sorry, it wasn't. Ms. Heather Armstrong, you are our first speaker. Welcome back. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you again.
Not 5 minutes, unfortunately.
No, 3 minutes, okay, I'll make it quick. Look, where are the solid survey data to support this enormous change to this lovely little park, to create a community green? We've already got a green, it's a green already, it's a lovely little grassy space. Where are the data to support this huge amount of change? This has been through so many applications by Chapman consultants to try to change this lovely little park into this highly controlled environment with concrete and walkways and tracks and so forth. It will change the whole park. It's completely unnecessary. I really cannot see the justification for this. It should be binned like that supposed dog park. The dog park was binned because it's just not wanted by the community. Nobody wants it. And the local planning panel thinks there's completely inadequate support for it. Can't see the reasons for it. Knocked it back. This is council's own DA, which your own local planning panel has knocked back. The message should be coming through loud and clear. Look, this prescribed, the initial 37 tree removal was outrageous. That's been modified. But even so, what is the need to remove anything above 4 metres in height, or sorry, below 4 metres in height, which is what your proposal will allow? So everything below 4 metres in height can go at the discretion of somebody or other on council. We don't know who. The openness of this proposal is just too vague. We need decent controls over what's going to happen to this lovely little green space, which is valued by the community, which nobody else wants to change apart from your consultants, for reasons best known to themselves. The other thing about this is that it's got contaminating substances being introduced, rubber softfall, which contaminates the soil. It actually is one of those very hot surfaces that schools, the kids eat on the very hot days. It's not an appropriate substitute. We've also got concrete pathways. We've got all kinds of hard surfaces coming in to what's an existing grassy surface. We've also got $4.75 million grant for this project, which is a huge amount of money. What's proposed, that money could easily be used to be distributed to other projects, which are far more deserving, such as Henley Community Centre, which is a rundown building, needs support, needs extension, needs a new roof, needs all kinds of stuff. Or what about Baronia Park Grandstand, that lovely old grandstand, the historic heritage grandstand, which also needs to be upgraded. We had a lot of money put into this new community facility, the rugby facility, so-called, but it's really not. It's amazing that there's so much money, $4.75 million being given to this little park for this proposed development. So the mind boggles really as to how this has come so far. And now that the LPP, local planning panel, has knocked you back, can council please just accept the umpire's decision and give it away?
Thank you, Ms Armstrong. Just stay there for a moment. Just in relation to one of your comments, the request, option 3 in the report, which I hope you've read, the request that the unspent funding be allocated to an alternate Hunters Hill Council project. The Department of the DPIE have advised that consideration will only be given to grant funding reallocation to an alternate project if it's shovel ready with consent approvals in place to be able to demonstrate the completion milestones are achievable. As council does not have another project that meets these requirements, this is not an option. So I just wanted to point you to that. Councillors, any other questions of Ms Armstrong? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, Ms Armstrong, congratulations on your run for the political party on Saturday.
Thank you.
It's great that you were selected by that party to run.
Thank you.
Secondly, you said nobody wants this. Have you undertaken a survey of every resident?
I asked. I'm sorry, may I reply?
Yeah,
where on the survey data to support this
Exists.
It is. And like I'm sure you did in August 2021, before I was a councillor, I attended at the time, Zoom consultation, which was really well led, if I might say so, by the council of the day. And it was an opportunity for local residents to take a look at the plans. And at the time, I think there were 3 options of different plans. And we were able to have like an open discussion, all of us on a Zoom call with the managers of the project or the proposed managers of the project at the time. And it was a really great, robust discussion to have. And I believe that all of those things which I saw were raised by those community members who joined that Zoom call were in fact captured by the proposals that were brought to this council. So I disagree that
do we have a is there a question? Okay. Yes.
So yeah, I disagree that nobody wants this. There was in fact quite a lot of support for some change to happen at Fig Tree Park.
Thank you, councillor. Any other questions of Ms Armstrong?
Sorry.
Would you like to reply?
Would you like to reply to that?
You already responded.
Sorry, you did respond to the question originally, councillor Vigara.
So the LPP decision was in relation to the tree removal DA. It's just relates to the removal of trees, not the.
Yes.
Oh, you're aware of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms Armstrong. I will now call Mr David Salter. Welcome back, David. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. After the unanimous local planning panel's decision not to change their original ruling to protect the trees in Fig Tree Park, I had intended to come here and smoke the peace pipe. But just last week, late last week, up pops this report, agenda item 4.18. After 2 years of bungling, mock public consultation, endless plans, and expensive specialists, this report suddenly wants your immediate endorsement for a new scheme produced in just 4 working days. No exhibition, no DA, no tenders, ram it through as a consent development before anyone has a chance to reveal its flaws. Well, this is not a consent development, it's a contempt development. Contempt for the residents and ratepayers who've tried so hard to help this council understand that all that's needed at Fig Tree Park is a safety fence, proper drainage, improved gardens, and some better seating. This report is like a card trick. It pretends there are only 2 options, of which you are blatantly urged to choose the preferred one. But there are, of course, an unlimited number of options. It's not just an either-or choice. Council's first DA back in July insisted that 37 trees would have to go to realise their plans for the park. Some were doomed just because they were old. Other trees had to make way for pathways or infrastructure. Many were deemed to have limited landscape value. A few were to be removed simply because it would improve sightlines. That initial DA assured us that those losses were absolutely necessary. But then, after community objections, the list of condemned trees was magically reduced to 21. Nevertheless, the LPP said no to that DA. Council requested a review. Again, the LPP said no. But now, with just a few tweaks to the plan, the major trees can stay, a complete backflip. So what are we to make of all those exhaustive reports from Council and its consultant arborists? Clearly, they were predetermined nonsense, inventions designed to justify clearing the site for overdevelopment. But there's an even more troubling aspect of this report. It makes no reference at all to the fundamental reason the local planning panel gave for rejecting Council's application for a review. The panel well understood that it's not only about the trees and the confines of Fig Tree Park. They made it very clear in their comments that any alterations to the park must be assessed in the context of what is proposed for the whole area. They said that Council first needs to confirm in detail their real intentions for the entire precinct, including the Stage 2 development ambitions for Gladesville Road.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Salter. Extension of time, Councillor Preston, seconded Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour, against, that is carried.
Thank you. That is a crucial condition. It was confirmed by every panel member, yet there is no acknowledgement of this in the report. In my view, that amounts to deception by omission. You are being asked to endorse an option against the expert advice of your own panel. So please don't be bluffed or bullied into making a rushed decision. There's no real deadline here. There's already been an extension, and who knows what the incoming state government might decide. You don't need to endorse the misleading all or nothing option proposed in this report. Instead, we suggest you commit to genuine consultation with your community. Together, we can restore and improve this treasured public space for the enjoyment of everyone and for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salter. For what it's worth, I'm willing to smoke the peace pipe. Councillors, have you got any questions? Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Salter, for addressing us tonight. I will say before I ask my question that I do believe that genuine community consultation was undertaken in this process, as I mentioned earlier with that. It had to be on Zoom at the time and in smaller groups because of COVID.
But can I point out that at no stage during that consultation was the removal of any tree mentioned?
I don't think that that's true, actually. I think it was suggested that some vegetation would have to be removed to make space for the one of many proposed plans at the time. But anyway, that aside, can I just ask, given that a new plan has been brought to council, which doesn't require the removal of so many key trees and vegetation, what concerns do you have with the proposal as it's been brought to us tonight?
I still think, and I think many in the community think, that it's way out of proportion. It's an overdevelopment of a very small, modest park. I mean, why do we need an amenity block which has been moved from its original proposed site near the shops way up onto Ryde Road?
What I'll say to that, just quickly, you can continue, but what I'll say to that is this was brought up multiple times during the community consultation process, and questions were raised about this. I, in fact, asked a question about that.
Yeah.
And the answer is to open up the space to create the
Councillor,
ease
sorry,
way.
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Preston's entering debate. This is about
I'm not entering.
Councillors, thank you. Councillor.
Ask me a question.
Councillor, sorry, Mr. Salter, Mr. Salter, please. Councillor, could you please
Yes,
direct questions and not enter into debate?
Yeah, sorry, continue your answer. Yeah.
You asked me why we object to the plan. There is no point cutting up a perfectly good lawn with a circular pathway to nowhere. It's utterly pointless. The children's play area has come down in size and it's reasonably modest, but there's no demonstrable need for it. No one has been running around saying we need a play area in that park of that size. The park is a good, local, peaceful space. It needs, as we've said, a safety fence so children don't run onto the road chasing balls. It needs proper drainage, which was never mentioned in the original proposal to develop this thing, but we've kept pushing that, and finally council, to their credit, have accepted that drainage is an important part of what needs to be done. The gardens have been incredibly neglected over time. Just tan bark just thrown under trees. That needs to be attended to, and the seating needs to be improved. I'm sure that the vast majority of the community would accept that that is a rational, proper way to do it. The money for it is there. We don't need the 4.75 million. In my opinion, council would do very well to return the 2.25 million that was in the original budget for the acquisition of number 2 Ryde Road, which is plainly impossible. I think it would be almost a fraud on the taxpayers of New South Wales to keep that money, but it still leaves 2.5 million, and what I've outlined could adequately be done with 2.5 million.
Thank you. I'll just ask a question to the General Manager.
Yes, Councillor.
Mayor.
Yes.
In light of Mr. Salter's response, do you have survey results and outcomes of that extensive community consultation process that was undertaken in 2021 to suggest that other groups of the community, particularly I would suggest that perhaps young families or children or my age group of people who do you have why does everyone interrupt me in this meeting room?
I haven't interrupted.
Thank you. Do you have evidence, survey results and the like to suggest that there are groups that do want the development as proposed to go ahead?
General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Preston. I think to give you a well-informed response to that, I actually will ask our Director of Community and Customer Service to come, because I was not the General Manager when that happened. All the community consultation actually happened prior to my arrival. So it's very difficult for me to make comment on something that I wasn't at. So if Annie could come forward, that would be great. Mr. Mayor, just while at your discretion here, Mr. Mayor, we actually, when I inherited this project, I will make a couple of comments, and I think Mr. Salter, you were here at the time, that when I first looked at it, I said that I didn't think that the playground and the toilet facility was fit for purpose. They were too big. And I made a commitment at the time to scale them back, which we did. I also made a commitment to reduce the amount of tree loss, which we did. But I will say, in regards to the amenities block, it's my professional opinion that was never scoped properly in terms of location. And I think it's probably appropriate, Mr. Mayor, that we do have the project manager on the line who can probably provide some very specific information about the process that we went through to settle on that location, because it was very thorough how we did that. And I also want to stress that the application that was put forward to the LPP was about tree removal. It had nothing to do with facilities. I think that's important tonight.
I
So we
will-
do have Trevor O'Neill on the line.
I'll first go to Annie to talk
Thank
about
you.
the process, which was councillor Prieston's question, and then we can go to Trevor.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, councillor Prieston, for the question, and Mr. Salter for your comments tonight. It's really important to hear from our community, not just back what was said then, but also what the opinion is right now. I'll just preface talking about the specifics of Victory Park and this particular project to talk about the plan of management process that we did a few years ago as well. That's where the ideas started to formulate about putting in a play space, putting in an amenities block, making accessible pathways relevant for our community, and fencing. It was part of a very broad
No
scope.
fencing.
Sorry, Mr. Salter, please don't interrupt.
It was part of a very broad and comprehensive community engagement process to do the plan of management, and many of you are aware of that. So I just wanted to touch on that for a moment. Fast forward to speaking specifically about the public legacy grant. Obviously, there was a community and citizens panel formed for that to get specific feedback based on the options. We also ran some online survey work. We were receiving emails, doing a lot of social media, and I can fundamentally say that there are segments of the community not represented here tonight who would very much like to see a play space and an amenities and accessibility through that park from the Hunters Hill Village shops.
Thank you, Ms. Goodman. Trevor, while you're on, could we just perhaps touch on a service issue, how we landed on the current location for the toilet block, amenities block?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity for the people in the gallery, Trevor O'Neill is the gentleman online who is council's designated project manager for the Victory Park project. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Trevor.
Thank you, Mitchell. To arrive at the location.
We've lost you, Trevor. Just lost your audio.
Take off mute.
Maybe are you on mute?
Sorry, councillors, while we fix this, is there any other questions of Mr. Salter? Councillor Vergara.
So you said that the pathways were useless. No, you didn't mean to suggest, did you, that a pathway wouldn't be useful to someone in a wheelchair or with mobility issues? You'd accept it would be useful for accessing the park for people with disabilities or mobility issues?
But there are plenty of people with disabilities in the municipality, and particularly close to the park, right? And they are perfectly free to use it, and they usually only go as far as the coffee shop, the ones in the lodge and the heritage. That they don't want to be wheeled around and around pointless circle in a park. You can't tell me that they would.
I can, and you would accept that the pathways improve the access for people with disabilities.
Access to what?
The parks, to the seats that will be in the park.
Well, but this.
No,
That
you don't.
all has
Okay,
to.
that's
That
fine.
all has
Sorry,
to
I'm
be.
just giving you the benefit of the doubt, but if you don't accept that, that's fine.
Mr.
Councillor Williams,
Mayor,
you got a question?
Not allowed to answer.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, do you have a question?
No, well, could the councillors please refrain from interrogating the residents?
The residents are here to answer councillors' questions, Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, they're here to put a point of view. The debate should take place around the council chamber once.
Which it can and will in a moment. Councillors, any other questions of Mr. Salter? If not, thank you, Mr. Salter. Sorry about the technical glitch. Have we got Trevor back? No? My apologies. I'll call Dr. Alistair Sharp to make his presentation. Thank you, Dr. Sharp. You have 3 minutes. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is my personal view. No, I'm not speaking for the trust now. Well, Victory Park. The general manager offered 2 options, either to abandon the project or accept a revised design outlined in the business paper. As a previous speaker said, there are a lot more than 2 options, and I urge you to proceed with a gentle upgrade to our precious little park. I'll mention some of the problems with option 2, which is to follow explicitly what is in the business paper tonight. Having failed to obtain a DA to remove certain trees, council is relying on the provisions of the DCP, which permits the removal of pretty much anything the removal of vegetation which is not prescribed. Now, most plants less than 4 metres high or with a stem diameter of less than 200 millimetres are not prescribed. But most of the small trees and shrubs are fair game to the chainsaw. Sustainability needs to be embedded into every aspect of the proposal, and it's unclear if a water-sensitive urban design has been considered or quality material selection has been sought. For instance, resin-bound stone pebbles, as are proposed for some of the paths, can appear fake and have a reputation for being slippery when wet. They certainly don't sound appropriate for scooters or mobility devices, or even for many elderly people. As for the soft play in the playgrounds, similarly to concern about synthetic turf for playing fields, it's increasingly being called into question for environmental and safety reasons. I believe there are sustainable and healthy alternatives, and so I don't think we should be specifying a particular material as a soft surface for a playground. Proposed large signage on walls and totems are overkill for a small local park. And fencing along Ryde Road, which I certainly would like to see, needs to be as invisible as possible. We don't want fencing as a display or as a feature, but there is no detail given to what sort of fencing is envisaged. Similarly, there's a specification for exfoliated stone light grey, which doesn't sound like the sort of material that belongs within our heritage. Sandstone is a more appropriate material for large format pavers and at the entry points, considering the geology and history of Hunters Hill. Little explanation is included in the documents before you tonight. The two drawings there are possibly similar or possibly not to drawings that we've had time to examine in more detail beforehand, except that they just omit which trees are going to be removed. They only now show trees which are there already or which it's added.
Councillors, I've got an extension of time. Councillor Williams, second to Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you. So, for example, they show fences, but they don't explain what the fences are for. Neither is there any explanation of the finishes and materials of the various hatched areas elsewhere shown in the drawings. Now, some locations are indicated for sculptural art. Now, unless council can ensure a very high quality outcome, I don't think this is an appropriate use of the budget. We have some other sculptural art in the municipality, which many residents find offensive. I would rather that were deleted. And we talked a little bit about the amenities building, and I think I've spoken before about it. I think the proposed position halfway along the road is quite inappropriate. The shopping centre with its 6 coffee shops and various cafes and other shops desperately needs a public toilet. There is no public toilet for 600 metres away. It desperately needs a public toilet, and the public toilet should be located as near as possible to Gladesville Road. For example, behind the community centre at number 44, where I believe there is already utilities required to plumb any public toilet. To finish, let me say I'm sorry if I sound a bit negative. I'm not negative about the project at all. I like the addition of lots of seating. I'd like to see more of the seating to be provided with tables. I'd like to see some small tables with smaller seats rather than just 6-person seats, so that people can sit down and eat if they'd like to sit quietly by themselves, so that people can bring along their laptop and work in the garden when the weather is appropriate. I like the path lighting shown in the previous drawings. They're not shown in the drawing before you tonight, provided that the lighting is carefully contrived so that it doesn't disturb the wildlife. But gentle lighting on the path as the days get shorter, that sounds fine to me. If only council could have engaged with the local community from the start, the job would be finished by now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Any questions of Dr. Sharp? Not. Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Good.
I now call Miss Maureen Flowers. Flowers. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is my personal address. Now that we've had 2 refusals by the local planning panel upholding the community's opposition to the removal of trees, it's time for the common sense solution that most people have been asking for, i.e. a modest and careful upgrade of this cherished local park. What would this look like? A toddler playground of an appropriate size for the available space, additional seating and tables in the shade, effective drainage, low-key fencing to add to the fringe of flowering trees and bushes that protect the park from traffic, and very importantly, proper care for long neglected trees. The strategic outcomes cited in this report, i.e. parks, sports fields and playgrounds support inclusive and accessible play, is somewhat at odds with the needs of the local community for this garden park. A play area for young families who can walk there with their toddlers is ideal, but the addition of elaborate, oversized play towers, which will involve cutting off the lower branches of the significant oak trees, is not. We already have a huge all-inclusive playground with a flying fox built at great expense at Riverglade Reserve, just 3 minutes up the road. The amenities block must be positioned where it logically should be, near the shops and underground pipework, rather than a long ride road to be used as a pit stop for early morning lorry drivers. The tragedy of this project is that all this could easily have been achieved with community buy-in, if it wasn't for the lack of transparency as to why trees were being removed at all, and the lack of opportunity for the community who had been consulted to death prior to comment on the infrastructure plans that were passed by council before anybody had any chance to observe them. The subsequent rejection of an on-site public meeting by the mayor in July 2022, unfortunately, just added insult to injury. In addition, the decision to demolish rather than continue to lease out council's own property at 48 Gladesville Road has already deprived ratepayers of many thousands of dollars. To insist on demolishing the house simply to provide a grand entrance into the park seems ridiculous, particularly as there are other options for access. And to not even consider the chance of selling the property is inexplicable, when the revenue from the sale could have provided the renovation budget for the adjoining community services buildings that are under council's care, or could have gone a long way towards wiping out council's projected debt.
Sorry, Maureen. Extension of time, Councillor Williams seconded, Councillor Priest, and all those in favour. Against, that is carried. Please continue.
Thank you. Or could have gone a long way towards wiping out council's projected debt of 2.4 million. The waste of resources, public money, and the community's time needs to stop now. We need this small cherished park to be upgraded with a light touch, the trees looked after, and the community left alone to enjoy its charm.
Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Any questions, councillors? If not, thank you. Maureen? Yeah, we might do that after the speakers. We call our last speaker, Miss Marilyn Mallock. Yes. I heard some feedback. Miss Mallock, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am speaking on behalf of the Hunters Hill Trust tonight. The colossal amounts of time and money already spent on this project is frankly an embarrassment. After all the iterations of council's plans, there is still no properly formulated infrastructure drawings or detailed specifications that show council's real intention for the whole area, i.e. the redevelopment of Gladesville Road at Huntersville Village. Council openly states that Fig Tree Park is just, and I quote, stage one of a broader council initiative to develop a community precinct
within the heart of the Hunters Hill town centre. So why has the community so far been kept in the dark about stage 2 of the development of a community precinct? When challenged by the trust, council denied the existence of this master plan referred to by all the consultants, implying that this was in fact the concept plan for Fig Tree Park. However, the fact that details of the Gladesville Road area are already in Fig Tree Park's plan of management was not lost on the local planning panel, who requested they be presented with full information before they were asked to make any decision. As evidenced by the many public submissions, the community is united in its resolve to resist any overdevelopment of the park. The trust did not need to marshal that opposition. It has been spontaneous and sustained. The plan for redevelopment of 40 to 48 Gladesville Road, part of the draft property strategy, has already been rejected by the community. Council's continuing lack of transparency and attempt to avoid scrutiny of this planned multi-storey development is depressing. This was, we believe, part of the reason behind the removal of trees in Fig Tree Park. In its submission to the local planning panel, council and the arborists stated that the trees to be removed were not in the way of the amenities block or play area. We believe the removals were in fact partly to facilitate the redevelopment of the park adjacent to Gladesville Road, so that there would be no constraint by the presence of inconvenient trees. This area could then be easily assessed and absorbed into a future commercial development. Council needs to rebuild trust and be transparent and open regarding any proposals for redevelopment in the municipality that are still on their agenda. These need to be properly scrutinised by the community, who must be allowed to have their say and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Vergara.
You referred to stage 1 and stage 2. I'm just, sorry, not aware of that reference anywhere. It's a genuine question. Is that referred to? Can you tell me where that's referred to?
No. Stage 1.
Stage 1 and stage 2 of some.
Yes, that's it. Can I answer?
No, sorry, Ms. Flowers.
It is that.
Yes.
In this paper. In this paper.
Not in that paper.
Sorry, councillors, you just need to make sure that you're directing questions to the speaker.
I'm delivering the address.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crassoy.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, if I might, through you. Is there a master plan for developing Gladesville Road that I am unaware of?
Not that I know of, but I can ask the question to the General Manager. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the spirit of transparency, I will make this comment. In the papers of the last council meeting, in the General Manager's report, it actually states there is no endorsed property strategy of this council. I have no endorsed property strategy or strategic plan or master plan for phase 2 along Gladesville Road. It doesn't exist. It's not endorsed.
Councillors. Councillor Williams.
I'd like some information if I may. Mr.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
It's been provided on the desk. I've got copies here for people if they wish to have a look.
Thank you, councillor. If you could. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Could we just pull up if that was sent through? Councillor Williams, I do have a minor concern here. And you should be aware because you signed the funding agreement. Point 6 of your motion, reallocate unused Fig Tree Park funds to works associated with the Priory or Henley Community Centre, would actually not be possible and maybe unlawful under the provisions of the agreement that you signed for the original funding agreement. I just need to take some advice on that because that is a potential issue.
Well, I can modify that to say reallocate with the agreement of the funding body.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Can we just change that? Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson. Thank you, Councillor. You can speak.
I'd like to read out the motion before I
Yes,
address the
you may.
issue. The motion is the council receive and note the report. 2, acknowledge the advice of the local planning panel in determination that the council needs to consider the project in the precinct context and that the removal of the trees is not in the public interest. Item 3, recognises the public concern and is to consider all infrastructure components through a development application approval process. 4, maintains all trees or shrubs prescribed or otherwise identified in the previous refused tree removal DA application. Council conduct appropriate drainage work, safety fence, seating under the grant And I've changed the relocate with the agreement of the funding body, use of the fund, unused funds to the Fig Tree Park funds to works associated with the Priory Henley Centre and other asset issues. And then 7, not proceed with the demolition of the dwelling at 48 Glazeville Road. Would you like me to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Okay, we've heard here tonight a lot of people raise the issue of transparency and meaningful consultation. And I use the word meaningful consultation. Council has gone through a lot of consultation, but was it meaningful? Did it actually influence the outcome of the proposal? Council seems to be doing this in a piecemeal way, and I was really disturbed that the matter was reviewed or sent back for review to the local planning panel without it coming back to this council, because I must confess it was very embarrassing for this council to do a DA application that the planning panel saw as not being in the public interest. Council's major role is to do things in the public interest. The planning panel, the umpire, said it was not in the public interest. They also, as it was heard by one of the speakers, made it very clear that this proposal needs to be looked at in the whole and in its context of the precinct. None of that has been done. Council is looking to do infrastructure activity on the site without doing the appropriate due diligence of the development application and getting approval through the community. I accept that there are ways of not having to do that, but in the spirit of engaging in transparency with the community, I would expect that to be done. I would expect an application to cover the whole project, not just part of it. Also, very intrigued by the word prescribed vegetation. The main issue that I think the planning panel realised is that it's not just about the canopy cover, it's about a range of vegetation, understory, that provides the important aspects to this park. And I suspect by using the word prescribed, you are leaving out those issues associated with shrubs, and they're very important in the park. To me, this process has been done bit by bit, approval sought in different fashions, not being prepared to accept the umpire's decision, particularly in terms of vegetation, and not looking at the issue in the whole. And that does disturb me and distress me, and I think it does many of our community. So I implore council to take a step back, to look at this project in a more simplistic way that meets the community's agenda and objectives, rather than trying to, as I think people said, paths to nowhere. Small area, you've got paths going around in circles, etc. It needs to be done in a way that respects its purpose and the community's intent to use that area.
Thank you, councillor. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the opportunity to produce a really great space for the community with this generous grant from the government. I accept that it's of utmost importance to consider community views on what this space should look like and what people want to see here. As I said earlier, I do think that consultation was genuinely and effectively undertaken in 2021. I, as a resident, attended those consultations and felt as though my opinions and the opinions of others in the groups that I attended have been incorporated into these plans. With due respect, there is next to no diversity represented in the speakers tonight, nor in the gallery. We cannot ignore the overwhelmingly positive response from other groups of the community in relation to the proposals regarding Fig Tree Park, and just because they didn't appear on a current affair. This project is the perfect example of the difference between something good and something amazing for Hunters Hill. I'm satisfied with various aspects of the proposal as brought to the meeting tonight, including with respect to sustainability considerations that have been incorporated into this plan. I'm overjoyed also that we have the opportunity to present to the community a project that is much like the one that received a lot of positive response from the community, but without the need to chop down as many trees and omit vegetation that is important to this community, as we have heard tonight. So I implore council to take the report with open arms, as I think it will truly deliver a really great outcome for this community.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Against the motion? Right reply, councillor Williams. Yes, councillor Sanderson.
Essentially, look, I've had great concerns about when the matter was knocked back by the local planning panel. Public interest. For an applicant for a development application, when I received a report like that, I'd be taking notice of it. I would address all of the issues that the committee has raised, and we haven't done that. We've just carried on again, and unfortunately, we've lost the opportunity to incorporate all the things that might have come out of that process going before the LPP. Sad too that I recall at a meeting that where the matter came back before it went to the LPP first time, and Councillor Williams and I both cautioned that there wasn't enough information going there, and how it could be approved. And I think Councillor Williams and I have been proved to be correct on that on 2 occasions by the LPP. I think I don't know this correct quotation, but Albert Einstein was once sometimes cited as saying, commenting on the foolishness of conducting an experiment twice, expecting a different outcome. That's the way we seem to go into this. I also agree what I'm hearing tonight, that it can't just be two options. There has to be something in between. And we've only got the two options, neither of which I would support. So, as I see it, I believe Councillor Williams' motion is the option we have on the table at this point in time.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers against?
Just a question. Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
councillor Crassoy.
through you to Councillor Williams. I'm just curious about the not demolishing at 48 Bladesville Road. Part of the motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The reason for that is that if we do respect the purpose and fit for purpose of the park, then you don't need to remove that cottage and have it as an entry. There is already an entry between 44 and 46, which is only 3 metres short of a block. So to me, from a sustainability perspective, and from a respect for the park as it currently is, there's nothing to be achieved by incorporating 48 into the park. And it should be not proceeded with, considering the current direction of this project.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Any other questions, councillor Crassoy?
Sorry, another question, Mr. Mayor, just following on from a comment from the gallery earlier. In the original grant funding of $4.75 million, was any of that ever supposed to be allocated when the grant funding was approved? Was any of that money that we received approval for whatever supposed to be allocated to the purchase of number 2 Ryde Road?
General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding to the answer to that question is no.
You, councillor.
It's in the budget.
Sorry.
The
gallery. Can the gallery please refrain from making comments? Councillor.
It's in the grant budget.
The fund. Yeah.
It's in the application.
Councillors, are there any other questions, debates for, against? Councillor Williams, right of reply.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've said on many, many occasions over the process of this proposal that the park is fit for purpose. There's a place for reflection and relaxation. This is a place which we should embrace rather than try to modify and change. We've heard tonight that the residents here, and I've heard through the consultation process, that less is better, more is not the way to go. We've heard from our planning panel that what was trying to be attempted was piecemeal, not in the planning, in the precinct context, and ultimately not in the public interest. Council needs to reassess its position on this, engage with the community, and make this park work for the community, not for some new invented facility of council. So I would ask the councillors to accept the motion and move forward in the spirit of it.
Thank you, councillor Williams. That concludes debate on the motion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is lost. Councillors, is there another motion?
Move the motion in the paper.
Which option, councillor?
Option 2.
Option 2. That's moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Prieston. Councillor Bagara, do you wish to speak to it? No. Any other debates? Speakers against? Councillor Williams.
I think we've heard here tonight that is not the option to go for. It is one that doesn't reflect the community's wishes here tonight, nor as I understand it, of the broader community. Not everybody would support what I'm saying, but I believe the vast majority do. And I think going down this option, to me, will end up again disconnecting council from the community and we won't get an outcome that the community would feel comfortable with or accept.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion? Speakers for the motion, councillor Crassoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've always been for this process. I initially felt that $4.75 million was a lot, and I initially wanted to see it going towards a master plan for Boronia Park, but that wasn't the terms of the grant at the time. When the grant was put to council, it was a legacy grant to create something really wonderful for generations 50 years from now to still enjoy, just as we do with so many elements of Hunters Hill that people before us have created, and actually indeed all over Sydney, plenty of wonderful historical places that people with vision created 50 years ago. Big Tree Park is not fit for purpose. It has never been fit for my purpose as a resident who lived down the road for 17 years. My daughter was born when we moved to Hunters Hill. My son was 4, my other son was 2, and I had a baby in a pram. And I walked from Mary Street to the Hunters Hill Village, which was Michelle's patisserie at the time, almost every day, sometimes twice a day. There was a butcher and there was a tiny little scruffy park at Maple Dorham's Corner, and I did not feel safe taking my children into Fig Tree Park at the time. My kids grew up. Gosh, I would have loved a playground where my 4 and eventually 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old could have played while I still played with my daughter in a stroller and a toddler. You don't commute or what's the word, as your children evolve in age. This is where you live. This is where your children grow up, and this is where you want them to love the place. It's where I want them to come back with their children, and I want to take their children to a park where I can eventually sit. Hopefully the benches will have been replaced once again. There'll be sandstone places, there'll be trees that have grown. It will be lovely. It's been a difficult project for the general manager and staff to have picked up at this point. I 100% do not concede or believe that there is a master plan that has been endorsed by this council. I was on the property advisory committee, whatever it was fleetingly called back then, and it's no secret that I wasn't thrilled with the way that things were going in the property committee at the time. But the fact is that committee dissolved, and any plans that they had went with them. That's not to say they won't come back, and if they do come back, I will still have strong comments to make about how we adaptively redesign that Gladesville Road precinct, which, mark my words, needs redesigning. And if I'm on this council, I will be part of supporting our community to make sure we get good outcomes for all of the services along there and for future residents of Hunters Hill. I hate to sound so stern when I talk in this way, but as everyone who knows me knows, I do get I take on board all of the hissing that happens at me in the street. I don't go to my favourite cafe anymore because I've been hissed away so many times. It's deplorable. This is Hunters Hill. We are here working together for future generations, not just to protect our own backyard, to design it and to love it and to protect it for a long time to come. I think the reason the tree design has been retreated is because the general manager, when he came on, recognised the drainage issue. He took on the advice of the residents and he saw the drainage issue needed addressing. He saw the playground was out of scale and he addressed it accordingly. That's not a retreat. That's not a backflip. That's just a new general manager coming in with fresh eyes and a fresh project manager, and recognising that this project could be done differently based on the feedback he's received. I know the community consultation was vigorous. I know the staff who were part of it, and some have gone. But I just see the same people here, and gosh, we value what our community bring in strength to support us to make good decisions. But the people who don't come are the people who are at home tonight feeding their kids and wishing that they could go up to the Hunters Hill shops and have a lovely, accessible pathway to get into a beautiful park. It will be a beautiful park. With my wheelchair, with my grandchildren's stroller, I will go into that park and I will go around the path with them on their little scooty things that kids go on. I'll pop to the local cafes and I'll use the bathroom. And I'm grateful to be part of the council that is 100% supporting the general manager and the leadership staff and the project manager to make it happen
in a beautiful way for Hunters Hill.
Thank you, Councillor Crassoy. Welcome, Councillor Quinn, or from wherever in the world you are. We've recorded you've entered the meeting at a couple of minutes ago. Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Not going to speak against my feeling this August motion. So what I would suggest is amendment that option 2.
Sorry, Councillor, could we just wait while we pull that up? Councillor, your amendment.
Okay.
Proposed amendment.
When you come to parenthesis in the first line of option 2, below option 2, maybe rather than as attached, change the wording there to like that attached. Then in the second line, change the word does to will. And finish the sentence. Not require the removal of all but vegetation that is essential to remove.
Is there a seconder to that motion, Councillor? No, that lapses. There is no amendment. Councillors, any other speakers for? Against? I will speak for. This is obviously a project that some councillors are well acquainted with from last term as well. I have grown up and spent 27 years of my life about 200 metres from this park. As a young person, I never felt that that was a park in which I was safe or that I wished to recreate in. We have a beautiful and budding village full of businesses that are well patronised, and we have a park that is not demonstrably not fit for purpose. This is a once in a generation opportunity for this council to deliver a really, really good project for this community. And I'm of an age where in the next couple of years, I will be thinking about having kids, and I will be thinking about that stage of my life that perhaps isn't catered for in that village. And I can, as Councillor Crassoy said, I will be proud to, and I'm sorry that you didn't get the opportunity to, but I would be proud to walk through a beautifully proportioned park that fits in and is part of and an integral part of the Hunters Hill Village. And I think that this is one of the most important projects, quite frankly, that we will be looking at and hopefully delivering in this term of council. And I do thank the state government for committing the funding. And I might add, although people have referred to this as a postage stamp of a park, it is not. It seems to be a postage stamp of a park because it is so segmented and cut off from the village. It is something that, unfortunately, $4.7 million doesn't actually go all that far in delivering. The acquittal of that funding will go down to the last nickel and dime because of what construction costs these days. So I'm looking forward to delivering, as this council, a really positive and really wonderful outcome in Fig Tree Park, and as someone who intends to be here for the next 50 and 60 years, I will be very proud to deliver that if we as a council see fit to vote that way tonight. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Quinn, did you put your hand up at all?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to ask if I may see the motion that we're voting on, please.
Councillor, it is item 4.18. Recommendation 1, the council receive and note the report, and option 2 in the paper.
Perfect.
For abundance of clarity, I will read option 2, that council proceeds with the project based on the revised design as attached that does not require the removal of any prescribed vegetation.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wasn't sure if there was any amending that happened before I came online. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for? If not, right reply. Councillor Vergara.
As perhaps the only person on council with 4 young children who now lament not being able to use the park to me almost daily. The only thing that they do is walk through and then scuttle through the space between 44 and 46. So you look forward to it in the not too distant future, you in the short future and me in the short-term future of enjoying the park with my children. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. That being the end of debate, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillors, I will now move to item 3.1, local planning panel appointments, notices of motions. Councillor Sanderson, would you like to move your motion?
Yes, I'm on this.
Seconded. Councillor Williams.
This is a fairly basic motion. There's quite a history to it though. Back after this council reported amalgamation, there was very rushed legislation that the government put through to remove the powers of councillors from development decisions. Unfortunately, it wasn't all that well drafted, and it does require and has required significant amounts of significant numbers of ministerial directions. What's brought about the need for us to have additional members of the LPP is one of those ministerial directions that was made on the 7th of December last year. I'm very concerned that direction will mean solution of the excellent panel that we have selected. And at the time that we went through the selection process earlier last year, we did look at the resumes of quite a number of applicants. And in looking at those, we managed to appoint 6 experts. And beyond that, there wasn't a lot more that you could choose from. My understanding is that only 3 people have expressed an interest in becoming, or further people have become or expressed an interest in becoming members of that panel as expert panelists. So I think the chances of us improving the panel are slim, and I would hope to see extra people appointed if they don't have the appropriate expertise. The process that we've been through in the past has been described as rigorous, and I believe we should stick with it. We basically had that process when the first panel was selected in February 2018, and we repeated the process earlier last year. At the end of the day, the wording of this motion is very similar to that, which was put back in it was actually the first notice of motion of this council, and that was adopted by the council, I believe, 4 votes to 2. And again, it delivered an excellent outcome. I won't say a lot more on this point in time, but I think it's important that we are very careful about how we add to the planning panel. The other issues that comes into it, we now have a change of government, and we don't know what their attitude on planning panels will be. My hope would be that it is a bit different to the current or the government that's just lost office. And I think it's vital that we go through a similar process again with councillors who were people who were displaced from making planning decisions, are the ones that at least elect those who will make the decisions on behalf of that council. So I would commend the motion. It will get support.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I will just throw to the General Manager to provide an update. There are some components of your motion that need to be addressed, given particularly we haven't got the requisite number of applicants, and I'm assuming that we're going to have to reach out to the department for direction on how to approach the requisite number of 15. But I'll pass to the General Manager to make comment about what we're doing.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, just for information purposes, not to make any comment around the notice of motion. So as Councillor Sanderson has alluded to, and as you would be aware, the state government has now said that we're required to have 15 expert panel members by the 24th of April. We currently have 6, which means that we need 9 more. Now, during the expression of interest period, which closed on the 10th of March, I was under the impression, Councillor Sanderson, going into the most recent briefing, we had 3, but we've in fact had 5, but we're still short, okay? So that still means that on the assumption that those 5 were appointed, and I'm not saying they will be, but on that assumption, we still would be 4 short. Now, we have had some email correspondence with the department, and the early indication is that they want us to keep advertising, right? But I'm not going to accept an email. I'm going to formally write to the department, and your guess is as good as mine whether there is a change of tact about the planning panel's composition with a new government. But all I can act on is what's in front of me. So it is my intention to write them and say, well, I want you to tell us formally, how do we now reach those extra 4 panel members? Now, to be pragmatic, I think the answer will be keep advertising, but I want that in writing. So that's what we're at.
Councillor Sanderson, just a couple of questions I have. That update that's provided by the General Manager may not actually mean that we're able to meet your timelines in motions 1 and 2, in items 1 and 2. I wonder whether there could be given a little bit of leeway there. And is your intention that at the moment you would imagine, given we haven't got the requisite number of applicants, the applicants would be appointed by virtue of their application? You're saying that you still want to go ahead and interview them, even though we haven't reached the number of applicants. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I was under the impression that the fund had stopped before April, the application period had closed. I wasn't aware that we had additional applicants, but I simply wouldn't accept a position forced to appoint people that don't meet the selection criteria. That selection criteria in the past, and we may well have candidates that do not meet that selection criteria, and I think it would be utterly wrong as a council to accept that. Now, I believe Councillor Williams has an amendment that he would like to put, which would probably partially address that concern. So,
well, certainly, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor, I've just got a couple of other questions. The application criteria, my understanding, it might be through you, but it may be to Sharam, is that the list of planners that make up the prospective expert members of the LPP are from a pool of pre-approved government experts. Is that correct?
Yeah,
so in terms of the selection criteria, there's none that wouldn't meet the criteria as an expert member.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer is yes, they're from a pool, but to Councillor Sanderson's point, they would have to go through a process to validate that they meet that criteria. It's all very well to reply to an expression of interest, but you've actually got to have your credentials validated. And just for clarity, Councillor Sanderson, the actual EOI closed on the 10th of March, so it's closed. Where the grey area is that there's no formal direction that if you're short, how do you make up that shortfall? It's actually quite grey. So I need to get some formal advice from the department to say, well, what happens next? Do you want me to keep advertising? Or, for example, that are you going to mandate a rule that if you're short, then you only run with the total numbers that you've got? So in this case, that would be, what's that? 11, right? Instead of 15. I genuinely don't know. I've got to seek that clarity from them.
Councillor Williams, do you have an amendment? Is it accepted by the mover? Do you know?
I don't know.
He seemed to know that you had an amendment. We like the fanfare. Is that, no, that's not it, is it?
Sorry, councillor Williams.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab one of them. Thank you, sir.
Is that, do you need that? Thank you.
So I'll talk to you about this later, but we can't plug memory sticks in under our new cyber rules, but I'll talk to you about that later.
Councillor Sanderson, you just told me that you didn't know what the amendment was, but then you handed it up on a USB.
No, I don't think I did say that I know what it was.
You did?
I didn't know whether I was going to.
Okay.
Anyway, can we get to
Do we have this?
Can we pull up the?
Yeah.
Can we pull up the motion? Sorry, can we pull up the motion as amended? I'll just allow councillors the time to read the notice of motion.
Mr. Mayor, can you
amendment.
just give us a moment?
Yes.
So this is councillor Williams for clarity. That's the one.
That's
Okay.
Okay.
There you go, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
There's a copy in front.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson, you can probably have that back, sir.
The amendment that you're adding to.
Councillor Sanderson, you can probably have that back. All right, it's already in there. That's all right. Yeah,
Yeah.
blow it up.
And did you add another amendment? I left.
Got a worm in it.
Okay. Right, from councillor Sanderson.
Yeah. It's it.
Oh,
The red-
okay.
The red is the amendment. And to a large extent, or to some extent, it addresses what the general manager was
People can
talking about.
take the time to actually read and consider it. Because it is a long amendment. Sorry, councillor Quinn, can we just have that on screen for councillor Quinn to consider? It's obviously the items in red are the amendment. Apologies.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Quinn, I know you've probably got some challenges where you are. Would you like me to read it, or you can see that on your screen?
I can see it, thanks. Yeah, I'm in Changi Airport. I can see it.
Not a bad
Thank you,
place.
thank you, councillor Quinn.
I'm happy to read it out, Mr. Mayor.
I'm just going to let councillors have the opportunity to consider it first. Councillor Williams.
Sense that the Wi-Fi at Changi Airport would be rather good.
The big airport.
The
Can we
beast.
just have, you child at 5.
That is, councillors, if you all had the opportunity to read that. Yes, moved, councillor Williams. Is that accepted? Okay, thank you. That becomes the motion. Yes, thank you.
Councillor
Councillor,
Presley just made a relevant reference to D. It should be 5 instead of 3, based on the general manager already
Yes.
acknowledging there's 5.
we can make that amendment. Is there any other is there a speaker against the motion on the floor? 4, councillor Williams.
Are we talking about the amendment or?
There's no amendment. It's accepted into the original motion.
Right, so
So,
you've spoken to the motion.
yes, councillor Williamson has.
Can I speak again?
Yes, you may speak
Sorry.
against the motion. Yes.
I just think that I need a little bit more information and clarity around this ministerial direction. This is the first time that I've read about it. But that's my own fault, all gone. But I just feel like I would.
You have a question perhaps to the general
Well,
manager?
I feel like the general manager already kind of alluded to the fact that he too needs to seek advice from the
Yes.
department, and I'm concerned that if we pass this motion as written today, it's not that I disagree with the intent of it, but if we're going to be making further inquiries to the department once it's constituted, I just would like to almost see this come back to council as a report from the general manager, which includes the outcome of that correspondence. So I'm just a bit reluctant to accept this motion as it stands.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Williams, did you intend to speak
Mr.
forward?
Mayor. This issue of local planning panels has been quite controversial over the years, and particularly when it was brought in. Hunters Hill Council did not agree with the process or the concept, but the minister eventually got to the point where he said, if you don't appoint people, then he's going to do it for us. So we went through a process which was rigorous, thorough, and also ensured and embraced what we would see as being the appropriate experts to deal with matters associated with our special municipality. That process did select the appropriate number, but it was based on criteria, and it was based on an understanding these people would fulfil the role that used to be done by council by an expert external panel. And I'm always amused by the fact they call it an independent expert panel, because the experts the government has put on the list are all part of the planning industry. They're paid in many cases by the development industry, architects, planners, etc. So it's always an interesting concept that how independent these people are. But having said that, we are stuck with the process. Maybe the new government may reflect and reconsider that it might be best to have the planning matters decided by the local council, the council that's been elected by the community, to respect and reflect on the values and needs of the community, rather than people that come from the development industry. Council has one community rep, and quite often those community reps do put in reports contrary to the decision of the planning panel. So it needs to be a robust process. We need to make sure that people on that panel do reflect the interests of our community, and it's not acceptable just to take people on the basis they're on an expert list. Those expertise may have no relevance to the planning issues that we would like to see reviewed or dealt with within the local planning panel. That's why we need to, and as the general manager has alluded to the fact that he would like to seek clarification on many of these issues from the department. I think it's important that council support the general manager in that quest and pass a resolution tonight, as it is stated in the amendment in 1, that we do formally as a council, not just as council staff, write to the incoming Minister for Planning for those reasons that are in the motion. So I support the motion in its amendment that's been incorporated on the basis that we need to be thorough and we need to get the best out of these local planning panels for our community and to ensure that our values are maintained.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers against? Councillor Bergara.
Maybe a question.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So the point 1E of the motion suggests that there's concern that the appointment of so many additional expert pool members will dilute the high skill base of our experts in delivering consistent decisions. Is there any evidence for that? What's the view of the director in relation to this issue?
I'll through the general manager, ask the director to make any comment.
Basically, I mean, the more panel members there are, the more, I guess, expertise they're bringing in. And I mean, our council is a small council. And I mean, at the moment, we do have, 6 experts at the moment, but I mean, it would add more. So the decision making on bigger projects would be,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Bergara, I think the context of the question, if I'm reading it or interpreting it right, is that if we have more, is there any evidence that there is a dilution of decision making? Is that the context or not?
Well, dilution of the skill of the experts on the panel.
Yeah. I can't speak for outcomes of the LPP, that's their decisions, but I guess the key here is that they have to meet a criteria. That's the most important thing. And I don't want to make commentary here, but I can't disagree with Councillor Williams that there are some people who still work actively in the industry. So I think that the more experts you have, as long as they meet the criteria, that's subjective, whether that does or doesn't. It's really hard for us to answer that. There's no real right or wrong answer to that.
So
Councillor Vigar.
on that basis, I'll reject the motion because there's no evidence for the concern in 1E. I don't know how as a councillor I can be expected to endorse a position where we put that concern if there's just no evidence for it.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Against the motion? Right of reply, councillor Sanderson.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I've got
Sorry,
a question, if I
councillor
may.
Quinn, I didn't see your hand quick enough. Yes.
Look, I'm just wondering, even that we've got these additional nominations, what I'm unsure of is, does that mean that they automatically would get on, or we would still have to vet them? Because ultimately we might end up rejecting the 5 of them, depending on how they come across and so on. So that's where I'm just a little bit in the dark about how this whole process proceeds.
Yeah, councillor, I think that the general manager, and I'm not sure if you were on or not, but the general manager did allude to wanting to go back to the department for that advice because there's nothing formal yet from them. And I think it was Councillor Prieston that suggested that this might be a report to council from the staff once we have an outcome of that process. General Manager, do you want to make any comment to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
No. Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers? Councillor Crasboy.
Mr Mayor, well, and I'm really open to be flexible here because I'm just hearing a lot around the room. I'm not saying I'm speaking for or against it. I was part of the original council, as were you, who did form a working party to appoint our last panel, and it was a worthwhile exercise. It was, as Councillor Williams said, it was rigorous, and we really felt that the people we chose and the people that we omitted from our selection were the right choices to make for our council and our needs, our diverse needs. So, but I'm hearing, firstly, some of the councillors in the room did not benefit from that process, and secondly, that there are some questions now with the new government, but secondly, with some of the general manager's questions about the number of people who've applied. So what I'm suggesting is, do we just reject this motion, or do we defer this motion and request a report from the general manager in relation to the items on this motion? And so that's what I'm proposing as a foreshadowed motion.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sanderson, right of reply.
Yes, Mr. Now, look, I would have problems with deferring and asking further reports. I think we're addressing it quite directly by because effectively we have a ministerial direction that was made by someone who's no longer a minister. We have a new minister who will be appointed. I think the first question is whether he will support the continuation of that. And I would hope somewhat that he will not. I think we should put the position directly that we believe the best solution would be for that directive to be repealed. There was one other slight thing I would change in wording that in red at point 1D, that given that we've had 3, now we have 5. But it's just a minor correction, if I can. Very minor.
Is it a grammatical correction?
Or it relates to the numbers because I already read.
That's already been amended, Councillor.
Oh, okay, all right, fair enough. Good. Okay.
I think you accepted it at the time.
Okay, all right, good, fine. But look, it's just so important that we can't leave ourselves in a position where we are forced to accept people that just may not meet our criteria even though they've managed to meet the criteria for inclusion on the pool of experts. I also have grave concern that with that pool of experts, there were 222 on it back in the 13th of May 2021, at the time when we did the last additions to our panel. And it's exactly the same people appear on the current list. So there's been no attempt by the government to make our job easier in having being able to appoint another 9 experts. It puts us in an incredibly difficult position. And I don't think we should be dealing from a position of weakness. We should be dealing from strength. I mean, this or the former council went to a great deal of trouble to oppose the making local planning panels mandatory, and it was right to do so. If we're going to continue to have them, I know there's been discussion as to whether there is evidence of diluting the panel. In my view, there is evidence of diluting the panel. The evidence was in the interview process that occurred last year. I mean, I know Councillor Vergara and Councillor Prieston didn't participate in that, but those councillors who did participate were pretty clear on who should be on the panel and who should not. There was a clear distinction between those who were appointed and those who were not. Now, if we open it up again, we'll still have those distinctions. We could be in a position where we need to appoint people that don't have experiences relevant to Hunters Hill. When you go through the list, in any case, there are 222 there. I think I did a rough count, and there's about 100 who way back in May 2021 indicated an interest in doing Hunters Hill, and then an even smaller number that have suitable expertise in heritage. Now, okay, you've got to have other expertise as well, but it's important that people have some ideas about heritage if they're going to add local knowledge if they're going to serve on this panel. So I just don't. I think we've got to take a position of strength and do everything we can to maintain the integrity of what I believe is a very strong panel.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now commit that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is lost. Councillor Cresswell, do you wish to move your?
I'd like to move a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
That the General Manager contact the Department of Planning to express our intention and to seek advice around.
Sorry, Councillor, can you just just allow the staff the time to put this together? Pull it up on screen if we can.
That the General Manager contact the Department of Planning to express our intention and to seek advice regarding, and then it goes, then just jump to point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the motion.
This is a formal amendment.
Yeah.
A formal motion, sorry.
This is a motion, not an amendment.
For the department to seek advice on all of those dot points as. Yep.
On just the red. Yep. No, 1 through 5.
1 through 5, the whole motion. Okay.
Yep.
Is that
Finish.
motion?
Finishing with that a report and recommendation be brought to the April meeting of council. No, it's going to take at least a month,
It's going to take.
if not longer.
Councillors, please, let's keep the protocols here. And that is your motion, councillor?
That is my motion.
Is there a seconder? There is no seconder. That lapses too. Councillors, I will now move to item 4.1, public gallery attendance protocols. That motion lapsed for want of a seconder. Councillors, just wanting to check items 4, 5 and 6, that is 4.13 to 4.16. Can I just check if there's any burning questions on any of these items or items that council wishes to speak to?
Yes, there are.
Councillor Sanderson. Item.
I've done it the other way around. I think we need to deal with 4.1.
4.1.
4.3.
4.3.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, could I just ask if Councillor Sanderson could speak more closely to the microphone so I can
Sorry,
hear him?
Councillor Quinn. 4.1 and 4.3.
Yeah. I've listed them the other way around, but that's the ones we can't
Yes,
do.
thank you. Yes.
Would that be easy? Because I've got that written down.
Sorry, councillor, you want to
Well,
deal
last
with.
time we did this, we reversed, we said, what do you want to speak? And then we changed to what don't you want to
So,
speak on?
councillor, am I to take it that you want to speak on 14 of the items? Is that what as I take it?
Well, let's can we list the ones that I've written out, which are the ones.
4.1 and 4.3.
No. Can we do it the other way around? Because I've got those listed rather than.
Which ones do you not want to speak to?
The ones I don't want to speak to are 4.2, 4.4.
And through to 16?
4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.10, 4.11, 4.13, 4.14 and 4.15.
So you want to speak to 12, 16, 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 and so just for clarity, item 4.1, 4.3, 4.12 and 4.16 you want to speak to?
Not 2.
Not 2.
Yeah, 4.1, 4.3, yeah, 12 and 15.
15 or 16?
15.
15. Okay, councillors, any other?
Does that include 4.1, 4.3?
4.13?
That we're talking, we're going to speak to?
Yes, the ones that you want to speak to.
Yes. Okay.
Yes?
No, he didn't.
Yeah, but 4.13 you want to speak to? Yes. Yes, okay.
That's it.
We just.
Councillors, any other items? So my proposal would be to pass items 4.2, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.10, 4.11, 4.14 and 4.16 as a block.
Should take 4.5 out of that.
Okay, 4.5 as well.
No.
Yes. Anyone wish to second that? Councillor Williams, all those in any discussion? If not, all those in favour? Against, those are carried. Item 4.1, public gallery attendance protocols. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Vergara, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion, Councillor Vergara? Councillor Crassoy? Councillor Sanderson?
I still have some concern about the policy. Much of it is covered in other places, and I'm very cautious about doing things that would impinge in any way on the implied right of political conversation.
Councillor Cresswell.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I don't read that anything.
Sorry. Yes.
I don't read that anything in here does impinge on implied right of political conversation. And is there something I'm missing through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sanderson?
Councillor Sanderson.
Well, sorry, I have a different view to Councillor Cresswell. I do see things.
Is there evidence in the report of that?
Look, I couldn't point to it. I haven't bothered to read on it. But
No, so no.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Williams. Speaking against?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. I'll take a slightly different slant on this. I don't see anywhere here that gives rights or protections to the speaker, to the people that come and address council in the gallery. It's all one-sided. And we've seen here tonight, from my opinion, residents coming here just to put their point of view, being questioned, having detailed responses from staff. I think we need to respect the rights of our residents to come here and speak without fear or favour and provide us with their views. You might not accept them or not, you might not think they're correct technically, but they're their views, and we should be able to let them speak without interruption and without questioning or without having high-powered staff come in and put a contrary view. It's their view. The debate and the gathering of further information comes from the floor of the council once a motion's moved. So I think it's a bit one-sided. I don't think it does at all address that issue that this council is currently engaged in, which I haven't seen in the other council that I've been involved with. So I don't think this goes far enough.
Thank you. Councillor Priest.
Can I please ask a question? To
Yes.
the General Manager through
You may.
Mr. Mayor? Actually, can I ask a question for you to Councillor Williams?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I just want to know how you would draft in to the policy protocol a right or an additional right for the public. Like what would your suggested amendments be?
I haven't thought through or put it down on paper. It's just really struck me here tonight when there was that, what I would call not respectful engagement with the community. I would like to see in this document that the resident knows that they will put their point of view, and in the document it should say that the resident is free to put their point of view as long as it's lawful and not defamatory, and councillors will not do more than ask specific questions. Just allows them some feeling of comfort. And the trouble we might have in this process is scare people away. If they come here to give a point of view and they get interrogated, they get asked questions that make them uncomfortable, that question the logic or question the facts that they're putting forward. It's up for us to decide whether or not they're right or wrong. It's not for us to quiz them. So I think just a simple thing in there that actually addresses the issue that how council will respond to them and respect them as well as what we're asking for them to respect us. And I've always been of the view, if a resident is upset, they may go beyond the pale of reason or whatever, but we're here to hear them, and not everybody has the experience to present arguments and issues in the way that we might around the table. So I think we need to respect the diversity. We need to give them some sense of security when they come in here, and to me that's not in the document.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Priest.
Am I able to speak?
Yes, you may.
Yes, no.
Have you spoken to?
I haven't spoken to. Can I speak to?
You can, yes.
Thank you.
Before you do, I will just say, Councillor Williams, in response to your claim of the one-sidedness that the councillors and council staff are all bound by the code of meeting practice under which we are required to show respect in the chamber. And I have to say there are situations in which I don't see that observed. So I hope that we all abide as much as we can by the code of meeting practice, and I hope that those in the gallery, as we saw tonight, once this is adopted, I'm hoping, will abide by the attendance protocol framework. Councillor Preston.
That's okay.
Sorry, did I?
Yeah,
I apologise.
You picked us all.
Yes, I apologise. Councillors, any other discussion? If not, right of reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Sorry, Councillor Quinn, did I think I said yes, thank you. Now I move to item 4.3, demolition of storage shed adjacent to Henley Cottage. Councillors, we have a motion. Any discussion? Councillor Williams, moved, seconded.
I'd like to do an addition to the motion.
Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Um,
We might just pull it up first.
it's a brief.
Thank
one.
you, Reverend.
Brief one.
Yes.
Part two, the council staff, the council consider the moving of the earn and return facility from its current location to this location once the shed's demolished. Enter into discussions.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Well, happy hands would be happy with that, but we'll see. Council consider removing the return and earn facility from its current location to this location. To I should maybe say Henley Cottage. Is that the intent, Councillor? Yes.
Not the cottage, but
The cottage site, I'll say. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Sanderson. That's the motion. Debate, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, just very briefly, we had that community meeting down at Henley, and there was the constant theme, parking is always an issue. It is difficult having that earn and return down the end of the cul-de-sac, down the end of the area. It's taking up a disproportionate amount of space. There's a conflict between trucks collecting and people trying to park. To me, it's worth exploring. Put it into that location that is easier for trucks to access, easier for residents to do their business there, and equally importantly, is a high profile site for people to be aware that it's there. At the moment it's hidden away. It's a thought, it's worth exploring. It may not be possible, but I think its current location would be better served at that shed site. I might also note, I think I mentioned it to the General Manager or to any, that shed is the site of the first SES facility in Hunters Hill. It went from people having the old beat up ute that was 30 years old, stuck in their front yard, with the equipment spread all over the place, to be able to finally bring it together. And a lot of that credit goes to Dr. Edelman, who was a former mayor, but totally dedicated to the SES and was the nucleus that created it, formed it. He argued with me to provide him a location, and that shed became available, and they started from there. Now it is quite a big enterprise in the hospital grounds.
Thank you,
Should be
Councillor.
noted in the report.
30's not that old. I might just throw to the General Manager to make some commentary around whether or not that's a prospect. I honestly am open to it, but Councillor, General Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that our Director of Infrastructure may want to add to this. So in the spirit of Councillor Williams's proposed amendment to the motion, I just want to make three observations which will respectfully need some investigation. The first one is that as part of the lease agreement with the current landlord, there's probably a commitment that we will replace that shed as part of their lease agreement. So that's the first thing because of storage and vehicles. Secondly, and respectfully, Councillor Williams, I can't answer this on the run tonight. I'd need to read the agreement with the actual supplier of that facility, what our obligations are about location. And then finally, and again, respectfully, objectively, as the general manager, I would have a fair bit of concern about volume of truck movements to collect that the deposited thing when it's right beside a childcare centre. That would worry me a little bit. But let's investigate it, explore it, and I don't know if you want to add to that, Samantha.
I think that covers it. It's definitely something that we need to explore, where the return on should be. As to that being the right location, let's investigate.
Thank you.
Happy to look
Thank
into
you.
it.
Yes.
That's the intent of the motion, Mr. Mayor, is to.
Thank you, councillor. Yes, I'm very open to it as well. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Crasaway.
Sorry, I'm going to be a lone voice, but I just don't think that needs to be in this motion. I know it's something that general managers mentioned before. I think it's limiting by saying that we explore it there. I think a lot of people recognise that the spot it's in is a difficult one and there's greater opportunity for parking there, whether it requires another motion altogether or whether it just requires a briefing down the track. I just don't think that this motion and being so prescriptive about where the return on earn goes is the right place. I just like to leave the recommendation as it was.
Mr. Mayor, as
Yes,
part of
Councillor
clarification,
Williams.
to consider it's not.
Thank you. It is exploratory. Yes.
You can explore a lot of places.
Yes. Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion? Right of reply? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I'll move to item 4.5, notification to public exhibition, advertising signage and A-frames on roads and public spaces, enforcement policy. Is there a mover of the motion?
Oh, fine. Sorry, you say fine.
4.5.
Page 71.
Thank you.
It's already been in block.
I have a question.
Yes, councillor Sanderson. Do we have a mover of the motion?
Sorry.
Item 4.5.
71.
Sorry if I'm going too quick, councillors.
You want to move it?
Councillor Crasaway moved, seconded. Me. Councillor Sanderson, you have a question?
Yeah, we've just been through an election cycle. There's no provision in there whatsoever for the councils, is there? As far as I could see. How is it going to impact? Does that mean individual candidates are going to have to pay to put their?
Technically, I would say yes, but General Manager.
Good. They might limit them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is all Roads Act.
All around the Roads Act. Yeah. We'll come back to you on that, Councillor Sanderson. Any other questions? Clarifying comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.12, minutes of Movement and Transport Advisory Committee meeting held 21st of February 2023. Perhaps someone move the motion. Councillor Quinn, you got one in there. I saw you. Seconded Councillor Crasaway. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson.
Look, I wonder whether those recommendations can be clarified a bit. I didn't see the minutes. But in terms of recommendation 3.1, point 2 reads that council consider the installation of line marking at Tyree Avenue and Woolwich Road and other adjacent intersections. The problem is, line marking doesn't really tell you what state was intended. So I would suggest that the recommendation 2 be that council consider the installation of, then insert yellow unbroken no stopping line markings.
General Manager, I am presuming through the relevant officer.
Well, could I ask, with your permission, please, Mr. Mayor, that perhaps Councillor Quinn may want to pass on comment on this because he's the chair of the committee.
Councillor Quinn, did you get that question from Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, I did, Mr. Mayor. Look, the officer and the director were both present at that meeting and they clearly know what's required. It is, as Councillor Sanderson suggests, the no stopping line markings. I'm pretty sure the director and the officer, Mohammed, are well aware of what's required. So, you know, I'm not sure that we need to be that specific because they know what to do.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion?
Yes,
Councillor Sanderson?
I'll just note that I'm not recorded as attending the minute that meeting, but I certainly did because of quite a bit of stuff I presented at that meeting.
Thank you, councillor. We'll have the minutes corrected. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, that is carried unanimously. Item 4.13, minutes of the Cultural Events Advisory Committee meeting held 6th of March 2023. Councillor Prieston moved, seconded. Councillor Vergara, any discussion? Councillor Prieston.
I want to speak for the report, but I also just wanted to speak to note that if council accepts this report, we are the committee is recommending to hold this year's Mookabola Festival at Bronia Park Ovals and on Sunday the 6th of August 2023. I note that I don't like the form of these minutes because they're not consistent with the form of the minutes of other committee meetings, but that's okay. So it's a bit hard to follow, but discussion around this involved informing the community about the reason why we've reverted back to hosting the event at Bronia Park rather than having it again at the Town Hall precinct. And I think that in order to avoid any miscommunication or regret from locals, we should be on the front foot about communicating this to Hunters Hill as soon as possible. And we should also let them know that historically, as pointed out by a number of committee members at the meeting, this date is the usual date of Mookabola, the first weekend in August each year.
Thank you, councillor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Vergara speaking.
Just comment, disappointed to see no Mayor Easter egg hunt in the April list of events this year.
We can talk about that. Fine. Councillors, any other questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, that is carried. Item 4.15, minutes of the Huntersville Local Traffic Committee meeting held 16th March 2023. Councillor Sanderson moved, seconded.
No, what I suggest that the report received and noted, and the consideration of the resolutions be deferred.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Williams, it's a motion on the floor. Councillor Sanderson.
My reason for suggesting that is that when you look at the report, it makes reference to various attachments which do not form part of the report. I only picked this up late this afternoon, but I'm uncomfortable with adopting recommendations that you know we can't envisage what's going on, because I certainly can't do that from some of the descriptions in the minutes.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, that is carried. Item 4.16, minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held 16th March 2023.
It was passed, wasn't it?
Was that passed?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillors, any items of general business?
Do we need to adopt those reports? We have to build it.
No, we already adopted them before, and that was put to a vote and committed. You voted in favour of it, councillor, as I recall. Councillor Vergara.
I would like to thank all the Hunters Hill residents who volunteered at the state election on Saturday, the 24th of March, and those Hunters Hill residents who stood for election, notably Heather Armstrong, who has been a long-term member of the Bushland Management Committee. I commend all the Hunters Hill resident volunteers on the manner in which the election day was run, which, apart from one sign of questionable integrity, was cordial and convivial. I also congratulate Anthony Roberts on his re-election, which is a testament to his hard work as our local member and a clear sign that the community was not calling for Roberts to be voted out, which was feebly offered as a justification for the deplorable sign.
Thank you, councillor. I would also potentially, and with your permission, be writing to the Premier-elect congratulating him on his victory and the new government on their victory on Saturday. And I'd like to congratulate Anthony on his being re-elected for a sixth consecutive term to the seat of Lane Cove. Councillors, any other items of general business? If not, we close the meeting. Oh, you got any questions without notice? Yes, thank you. Yes, if you could, and potentially email them too, but if you got them there, that is perfect. Thank you, councillors. We'll close the meeting at 9:08.